Right then, kids, you're sitting comfortably. We're going to be here for a while. Welcome to my review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 5. We're here again, at long last. It's been, what, 4, I think, maybe 5 months since I started Season 5 and therefore Angel Season 2. Now it's all done! Another 44 episodes to Buffyverse in the can. Therefore, that means I have a lot of notes to make, a lot of clips to rewatch, a lot of reactions to rewatch. As much as I hate rewatching myself, I just need to get a feel of what episodes I could clearly really like, stuff like that. Things I may have missed the first time, etc, etc. But yes, compiled all my notes. That's what I've been spending the day doing. Ready to record this. How long will this one be, I wonder? Who can say? As long as I need to talk for, basically. Well, need to. I ramble, as I'm doing right now. Anyway, yeah, it's going to be a fairly standard cop at this point for these reviews. This is going to be split into 6 sections. I'm going to be talking about my general thoughts and opinions, discussions and stuff about that of the season. Then we're going to revisit the predictions I made in my last review for this season to see how well I guessed stuff. And then we'll be doing some character studies to just talk about some, not all, of the characters. If we talk about every single character in the season, we would be here for a very, very, very long time, as opposed to a very, very long time. Then we'll be talking about the themes of the season that I picked up on personally, because obviously this whole review, my personal opinions, my personal stuff I picked up on, I may have missed stuff. You know, I don't listen to interviews or anything with what the directors or writers, whatever, are intending, so this is just my interpretation of stuff. There may be things that I did think but forget to talk about, etc, etc. Then after the themes, we'll be going into the favourite episodes that you guys have for this season that you voted on in my post on my community page, then my top 5 favourite episodes of the season, and then finally my predictions for Season 6. So yeah, stay tuned for that in about 4 hours time. I don't think it can't be that long, surely not. Although I do feel like I have a lot to say about this season. This was a very, very heavy season. I am glad that I could take some breaks and watch Angel every now and again in between. Because yeah, this was a lot this season. It was very deep, very heavy, heartbreaking, but also, you know, it had its really funny light-hearted moments, as Buffy always does. It gets that balance, you know, just right so many times, and I feel like Season 5 is no different in that respect. So yeah, general thoughts, observations and discussion of this season. I actually, when I first wrote out this section, I was kind of thinking, I don't think I have a lot to say actually, and then suddenly I had a whole page of notes for section 1. I normally have half a page of notes for this bit, so this is going to be fun. I hope you've got a cup of tea ready or something, you've got snacks. You know, I will at least be taking a break, because the battery on this camera will almost certainly die. And you guys can pause at any time, so I suppose it's easy. Congratulations to you in advance. So yeah, first things first, this season I think the flow of it was really, really good. I actually wrote down, I made a note a couple of episodes ago, well, a couple of episodes before the end, that this season felt like, to use a book term, a page turner. And it just felt like every single episode was necessary and part of this cohesive story, and it just felt like I was reading a book as I watched this season. That's kind of what it really felt to me. It was just really cohesive, and it's not that previous seasons haven't been cohesive in that sense. It felt, I think, the previous seasons, there was the odd episode or two where I was like, okay, that was kind of a bit of a tangent from the main plot or the main arc, or this didn't really reveal something about the characters, or this didn't really have a particularly funny line or scene or whatever that I think was memorable. Whereas I feel like this season very much had that flow all the way through from beginning to end. It felt like one long cohesive story to me in a way that previous seasons haven't quite felt like, not to their detriment, because obviously some filler episodes or whatever, I know a lot of people don't call them filler episodes, and that's fine, but I do. Some people still really, really like those episodes, and I still really liked a lot of one-off episodes. But I think more of the one-off-ish episodes in this season still kind of fed into the main story in a really brilliant way. And yeah, because I've also felt that way about this season, while also having to switch between it and Angel, the fact that it still felt cohesive even though I was switching between two shows, well, a lot more than two shows, because obviously I react to more than that stuff, I think that's very, very impressive. I can still kind of go like a week, maybe two at times, without watching another episode of Buffy, but I just like sit back down, I'm straight back into the story, I'm like, yeah, this feels like natural and organic. And I think that's one of the most impressive things about this season for me, is just, it's a well-rounded story. And I think it explored every kind of avenue that I wanted it to and feel like it could have done. But we can talk more about that later. What else did I say about this point? No, just it's one long story, and I think that worked really, really effectively. And I imagine that must have been pretty hard to do. But yeah, even, for example, the one episode that springs to mind for me is Triangle, which wasn't like one of my favourites of the season. But it told us a bit more about Anya's past, and it also had Olaf's hammer in it, which seemed to be like, oh, it's a joke, they're just going to keep it, ha ha. Oh, Spike can't lift it, ha ha ha. And then that came back in The Gift, and Buffy ended up using that weapon against Glory. So it still kind of had a role to play in this long story, which I think is just so brilliant in the fact that every episode of this season, to me, felt quite necessary. And for a 22 episode season of television to feel that way, I think is kind of astonishing. So I really, really like that about this season a lot. And Buffy's arc in particular this season was probably my favourite arc. Certainly my favourite arc of this season was Buffy's. I think Buffy's journey this season is probably one of my favourites of the entire series. You know, I've loved a lot of the development for so many characters, and I've always really, really liked Buffy as a character and her journey and stuff like that. But there's something about what they've done with her in season 5, and really, really testing her like never before. This world was breaking her down, taking all these things away from her. She was fighting this threat she just couldn't beat. And, you know, she went into like this comatose state because for a second she gave up, and she hated herself for that. You know, I think she spent a lot of this season thinking, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. And I don't think there's anything more toxic to a person than self-hatred, and I think that was very much the case for Buffy. Because at every turn, it was like, I'm not good enough to protect Dawn. I didn't do CPR fast enough for my mum because I couldn't remember it for a second. I let Glory take Dawn away. I let Riley leave. She's blaming herself for so many of these things. And obviously I'm going to be talking a lot more about this when I talk in the character section. But just that whole arc and how that was tied directly into the story arc of the season with Glory and Dawn and everything like that. It really is a story arc tied to Buffy herself. As it should be, I think, when the show's called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Just the way that all played out, and how she kind of found a sort of peace with that in her death at the end of the season. I just think that was such a beautifully done arc, and one of my favourite things about this season as a whole. And even alongside that, we had all the other supporting characters and all the other main cast who still had some really fantastic and brilliant moments in this season. Every single character, I think, got at least an episode or two to shine, or a few moments in episodes to really, really shine. I guess you could call Triangle somewhat Anya-centric. I think there was a lot about Willow in there as well, because more so Willow and Anya's kind of relationships with Xander. So that was kind of the most Anya-centric-ish episode I feel like we got this season. But I can remember so many moments where Anya just made me burst out laughing. When she played the game of life, for example. And that was in, like, Real Me, I think. That was, like, really early on in the season. And, yeah, she's just really come into her own. So every character has had at least a moment or two to really shine alongside this so beautifully kind of orchestrated arc that Buffy had this season. So that was another thing I really, really enjoyed. And speaking of great moments, I just wanted to say, Spike's out for a walk, bitch. My favourite line in Buffy, I've decided it's official. I love it. So, so good. one of my absolute favourites, and that is along with Harmony's line about the no smoking sign. That still kills me just thinking about it. And they are in like the space of like a couple of episodes, I feel like. I think the Harmony moment was in Out of My Mind, and I think it might have been No Place Like Home was the Spike line. But I think that is my favourite line of the series, honestly. It's so funny. If not my favourite, it's the funniest line. Just the delivery of that. So yeah, every character got like their big moment to shine, and they had a lot of time in the spotlight alongside Buffy's fantastic arc. And yeah, the cast, as always, were phenomenal this season. They really always bring their own game, I think. And I think especially Sarah Michelle Gellar, what she's managed to accomplish in this season, I think is extraordinary. And, you know, she is the touch of the character at the end of the day. And I think so much of the success on the show has to rely on her. So if you sit down to watch a show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you kind of want to root for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And you certainly do. And the way Sarah has portrayed Buffy since the beginning, you know, as like this young schoolgirl, and now we kind of see her growing up before her time because of being the Slayer, but also because of losing her mum. So now she has to care for her little sister, who she's spent all her life not actually having, but remembers having had. And getting over that initial kind of manipulation, you know, she didn't ask for the monks to kind of mess with her life in such a huge way, but she just went with it. I just think how Sarah Michelle Gellar portrayed that was so stunning, and her performance in the body was, I don't think I could put that into words, so that might shorten this video a bit, and that probably saved me half an hour trying to describe how incredible Sarah Michelle Gellar was in the body. And well, the whole cast was so good in that episode. But I just really want to shout out Sarah Michelle Gellar's performance this season, because sometimes I feel like I don't give her enough credit and enough love, even though I mean to. Because as much as Willow's my favourite character and Alison Hannigan's fantastic as well, you know, I still need to pay attention to the rest of the cast. So yeah, Sarah was stunning this season. I loved her performance. And I also feel like you should give some credit to Michelle. Is it Michelle, I think, is the actress who played Dawn? Coming into a show that had been running for 4 years and had like its own little fan base, and joining this main cast of people who'd worked together for years at this point, had all this chemistry and stuff like that. And I knew she already knew Sarah Michelle Gellar, but that can't have been easy to suddenly be the new character of the season, the new main character. So everyone's thinking, what the hell is this? While the characters are even thinking, what the hell is this? And, you know, those early few episodes, it's kind of like so many of the characters are kind of doubting Dawn when they kind of start to piece together what's going on with all of that. So the audience might have been like, well, why the hell should we care about her then? If, you know, if she's not actually Buffy's sister, why should we care? I imagine that was been incredibly difficult to deal with, but I feel like Michelle still found a way to fit into the show in a brilliant way, in a way I didn't even know I think the show needed. I think Buffy having a little sister has actually added another layer to her character that I didn't really think we'd ever see, and I really, really appreciate. And you know, she's been fantastic in a lot of her episodes as well. Like Blood Ties is a big example of that, when she found out she was the key and how that affected Dawn. I think Michelle also did a really commendable job this season, kind of slotting in to this already established fantastic cast of characters who have all been quite well developed already. And to be like the story focal point of the season as well, you can fall into the trap of the season is about this character and the mystery of this character, and they get wrapped up in that mystery so much that they don't actually give that character traits or things to like or get interested by, you know? And I don't think that was the case at all with Dawn. I feel like she was a realistic portrayal of what this group of monks who, let's face it, just lived with each other and didn't really talk to people, I imagine. This is what they kind of imagined a 14-year-old girl to be, I guess. And I think a lot of it was fairly accurate. And I believe when they initially came up with Dawn as a character, I think she was supposed to be younger, I think. And I think that does show at times, but you can kind of relate it to the monks, I guess, if you really want to get nitpicky like that, I suppose. So yeah, I thought the whole cast were great this season, but Sarah was just sublime. And I just wanted to give some credit to Michelle, because that must have been really difficult to come into this pre-established show in its 5th season and try and, stand out, especially when the main arc of the season relies a lot on your shoulders. That couldn't have been easy. So shout out to her as well. And what else? The main arc was really interesting, as I said, and I liked that the kind of main plot of this season was very much about Buffy and related to her, as opposed to the initiative stuff last season, and the big bad with Adam and stuff like that. I didn't personally feel that real personal connection in the way that I really liked Angelus, for example, or I really liked the Mayor and Faith tying into Buffy's story. We didn't quite get that, I think, with the initiative. We got a bit of it with Riley and his ties, but I think they explored more how the initiative was affecting Riley as opposed to how it was affecting Buffy. So it didn't quite feel that same level of personal, intimate connection with that story arc and that big bad. But I think this season was kind of back to form with Glory and the Key. That whole arc I really, really loved. I thought Glory was a fantastic big bad for the season. And the story arc of Dawn being the Key, just the way it throws you into the deep end. It doesn't kind of treat the audience as stupid and say right from the off that, Buffy has a baby sister who suddenly is here. It gives you a few episodes before it even properly addresses that, and gives you answers. So I like that the audience is respected in that sense, and it doesn't make it like overly obvious, like wink wink, clearly she's not supposed to be here, guys. They didn't really shove that down our throats, because they know that we knew Dawn wasn't always around. Their treatment of that I thought was really, really respectful for the audience as well, so I really liked that. And yeah, I think season 5 produced some incredible episodes, because not only is the arc, I think, fantastic, but the individual episodes in this season. The Body is probably the big example of that for me. How emotionally affecting that was, how invested in this whole story I got because of episodes like The Body. Even saying The Body makes me want to cry. And Fall for Love is another big example of that, an episode you can really get hyped about. I don't want to keep listing all these off because it's just spoiling my top 5 basically. But again, as always, Buffy. Every season of Buffy has like a really, really fantastic episode. I think even season 1 has Prophecy Girl and I Really Want You, Jane. God damn it. And yeah, season 5 is no different in that regard. And I think season 4 may have been a bit more experimental with different sorts of episodes. I feel like having episodes like The Body come up every now and again and not be like a trope. We always need to produce a different kind of episode. They don't need to do that. But an episode like The Body was just so... It was an episode of Buffy completely unlike Buffy, and it worked so brilliantly. I think that's what I'm trying to say there. Season 5 had plenty of episodes that were just stunning, I think, is the word I'm trying to use. But we could talk more about that in the actual episode section. So yeah, this season, as always, had some really, really stellar episodes. And then Foreshadowing, I also want to talk about in this season. Not only is stuff that was foreshadowed before season 5 started, in like Wrestlers, for example, and probably other things that I haven't even picked up on or mentioned, and I won't pick up on them until I rewatch the show in probably about a year when I actually get to finish it. It's going to be tough to find time, because obviously you're still going to be reacting to new shows all the time, so you rarely can find time to watch TV unless you're reacting to it. But I'm looking forward to rewatching it and seeing what foreshadowing I can pick up on. But I think season 5 still had a lot of foreshadowing, even in its self-contained season, for what was going to happen. I think Fall for Love is an example of that, with Spike kind of taunting Buffy. You know, one day she's going to like crave death, in the way the other Slayers almost did, foreshadowing the events of the finale. The way they layered in the stuff with Buffy in Blood Ties when she was talking to Dawn, like, your blood is just like mine. Death is your gift, the foreshadowing of all of that. It was just so well done, so satisfying to see those payoffs. And, you know, Joyce's brain tumour in the first half of the season, and, you know, that all gets cleared up. You think that's kind of fine, but then, boom, real life hits you in the face. And I just think the foreshadowing in season 5 was so well done, and it's probably foreshadowed a lot of stuff still to come that I haven't picked up on, which I'm excited to get to. And there's probably still some stuff that was foreshadowed in the past that still hasn't kind of been foreshadowed yet. But a lot of you guys did point out to me a lot of things. Like, I think it was Faith in a vision from like graduation day or something, counting down from 730, and it was about 730 days away from Buffy's death. Joyce's credit card, I think someone pointed out, the expiration date on that was the month and year that Buffy died in season 4. What else was it? I'll Be Back Before Dawn was in Restless, obviously. Dawn, that's kind of self-explanatory. Just things like that. There's definitely more, but I kind of forgotten. And how clever is this show? It's just so good. And season 5 is another great example of that. Just some stunning foreshadowing throughout. Just how this whole season's been so meticulously planned and orchestrated and carried out, and written and performed. It just all flowed so well. And I don't know if that was a direct consequence of the trouble they had with season 4, with like actors wanting out of contracts and them having to like change things up at the last minute. And so I think Walsh was supposed to be like the big bad of season 4. They had to change that to Adam when the actress left, and we had, you know, Seth Green leaving early in the season to do a movie, so they had to change the whole love triangle thing they were going to do, which honestly, that's the only good thing that comes from Oz leaving, because I'd have hated every fucking second of that love triangle. So yeah, I think maybe they were like sitting down for season 5, we're like, we can't let what happened happen again this season. We need to meticulously plan this, we need to get those contracts locked in. I don't know if that's why this plotline worked really well, because they worked extra hard on it because of what happened during season 4. I'm not sure. Obviously I can't say for sure. But how the writing and the foreshadowing and the performances and all of that's just come together in a sublime way, and what could have been like a sublime conclusion to the show, honestly. I'm glad it's not. But, you know, if that was it for Buffy, I probably would have been pretty happy with that as an ending. But I'm glad we are getting more, because more Buffy is good. So yeah, I just think that was done so brilliantly, and I think every single avenue of story they could have explored with this arc in this season, they did. Which in previous seasons I'd have been like, it would have been cool if we'd seen this happen with this character, or if so-and-so had like come back for this moment, or maybe they could have done this storyline in this way. With this season I don't really have that. I do have moments like, I wish they kind of did the whole Ben and Glory kind of really merging into one and remembering each other's pasts a bit earlier in the season, because that could have been more exciting to explore. But they did explore it. It's not like they never explored it, which I feel like other seasons may have not explored avenues compared to this story arc, which I think had all these avenues explored, however briefly. And yes, I may have wanted more of some of them, but they did explore them, and that's kind of what counts at this point. So that's another reason I think season 5 is so stellar. It's just because of that. And I do often really struggle to like rank big bads or rank seasons and stuff like that, and I'm very indecisive, and I'm always changing my mind because I'm a fool, but fool for love. And I do still think the Angel turning back into Angelus in season 2, that's still my favourite story that Buffy has done. That's still my favourite arc, I think, that kind of second half of season 2. But talking in general terms and as a whole, and of sheer quality and watchability, I think season 5 is my favourite season so far. And I don't think I've ever really definitively had a favourite season until this point. because I've liked so much about so many things. You know, I was always so torn between season 2 and 3, and I still am, honestly. I still go back and forth with which season I prefer there. So now it's the battle for second place with those two as opposed to first, because I think I would have to put season 5 at the top, just for the sheer quality of some of the episodes, the consistency of the quality, the way the arc was set up and explored and wrapped up, and the character arcs and stuff we got this season. Just so unbelievably good. I can't kind of get over how well executed this season was. So yeah, it's my favourite season of the show so far, and will it be topped? Who knows? But, you know, season 6 and 7 do have some big shoes to fill. And I do hear polarising things about season 6 and 7, so I'm really excited to see what I'm going to think of them when I get into them. Because I do know I had a few patrons message me on Patreon saying, I'm really sorry, but I'm, you know, leaving Patreon now and unsubscribing from your Patreon because I just don't like season 6 and 7, which is perfectly fair and okay. But I've also gotten comments like, oh, I can't wait for you to get to season 6 and 7, they're my favourite seasons. So I'm very, very excited, because all I really got was praise for season 5 as I went into it. All I got was really hate for season 4 as I went into it, but I still ended up really liking that season a lot, but I really did love season 5. So I really don't know what to expect from season 6 and 7, and that's really, really exciting. I don't know how drastically things change because they moved to a different network. Is that going to really affect things? Is that going to affect crossovers is the thing that I'm concerned about. Don't tell me, obviously, but I am hoping we'll still get some more Angel crossovers in the other seasons, because we got a couple in this season, but not a lot. But that's fine, because I don't really need the crossovers, especially because Angel and Buffy now do feel like very, very separate and distinct shows. I don't really need the crossovers as much, so that's okay. But yeah, that was my general thoughts and observations, feelings and discussions about season 5. I feel like that went on for a while, so if you're still here, buy yourself a cookie and enjoy. So yeah, next section is going to be revisiting the predictions I made at the end of my last review for season 4. I made 5 predictions, I believe, and yeah, we're just going to quickly go over them, see how well I did. I say quickly, do I do anything quickly? So yeah, my first one was that a lot of the couples were going to be tested in season 5. My main examples that I gave were Willow and Tara, Xander and Anya, and Buffy and Riley. So I'm going to say that was a definitive yes. I was right about that. I mean, I think that's kind of a given, because a TV show, couples can't be happy in TV shows, particularly reading shows. But I think Buffy and Riley may have been tested the most. Yeah, that was quite something. Big old yes to that prediction, I would say. Buffy and Riley certainly were tested to the point where Riley's fucked off. Didn't even make it to halfway through the season, poor guy. But yeah, we'll talk a lot more about Riley and stuff later on, and how that all kind of planned out. And it's kind of crazy to think that Riley was in this season. Now I've actually watched so much since he left. It does feel like a completely separate kind of story. And it is mad to think that, you know, Riley was around for nearly half of this season. You know, he's one episode away from being halfway through. Yeah, it just feels like so long ago. It's kind of madness. So yeah, Buffy and Riley certainly were tested because they broke up. Xander and Anya, I wouldn't say they were as much, I suppose. I mean, they got engaged at the end of the season, so things can't be going too badly. But it's a Whedon's show, so that will change. 2 seasons, anything can happen. But yeah, that does also tie into one of my predictions for season 6, actually, those two. So yeah, I think, you know, they had like moments and stuff like that. The replacement was probably a bit of an issue, that episode. But for the whole, they kind of just stuck together a lot. I think because a lot of the comedy from Anya comes from Xander being like, Anya, you know that's wrong. They do a lot of like jokey scenes like that, so they kind of have to keep them together if they want those kind of scenes. So they weren't like tested in that major way, and I loved how their arc kind of ended up at this season with them getting engaged and Anya pushing Xander out of the way to, you know, save him from all that rubble and stuff. So yeah, they weren't tested as much. Willow and Tara, I would say, they were tested, especially in Tough Love, and Tara kind of said she was scared of Willow, and how she was like using magic, and how powerful she was getting with it. That of course to like the tamest, most wholesomest-ish argument ever. I don't know how they managed to have this really intense argument and not raise their voices. That's kind of crazy in like a really cool way. And then obviously Tara then had her brain sucked out, which wasn't ideal. That is a bit of a dampener on the relationship. But that therefore tested them because Willow had to kind of look after Tara even more. Tara was really reliant on Willow to kind of keep her safe and fed even. So that was kind of testing them in a different way, you know. It wasn't like there was a love triangle going on, or, you know, there were communication issues going on, or they were growing apart. It was just glory kind of getting in the way there, but also miscommunication in some aspects. And yeah, so they were tested, but maybe not in like a similar way to like how Buffy and Riley were tested, because they were, you know, torn apart. But yeah, overall I'd say that prediction was pretty spot on. But again, I can't give myself too much credit because it's a TV show. Couples are going to get tested. I did also say there was going to be a singular or minimal big bad, and I would say yes. I'm fantastic because we got Glory. Yes, she had her minions, but you know, when you think of the big bad, it's going to be Glory. And Ben kind of counts in like the same kind of mold, and he himself wasn't that big of like the villain. It was very much Glory was the big bad. So kind of, I think, getting on a bit of a pattern in terms of that, which isn't a bad thing because that came into my predictions, which we'll get to in 17 hours. So yeah, we got Glory as the big bad because after having the initiative and Adam and all of that, be like that big kind of feeling last season, I thought they were going to tone it down a bit with this season, and they did. And we ended up getting a really, really cool big bad in terms of Glory. Then I also said Spike could potentially start to redeem himself and become a love interest like I knew he was going to become. I've kind of put like yes and no for this one. I wouldn't say Spike's like completely redeemed himself in any stretch of the imagination. Probably never will. But he's certainly changed a lot. He still very much, you know, does evil things and disgusting things, because he's an evil soulless vampire, so you kind of have to expect that. But I do think, you know, he has moments of real humanity, which is ironic for the vampire in him. You know, I think there's still deep down a bit of William still in there. So yeah, I think there's a bit of that. And as a love interest goes, also like yes and no, because he is in love with Buffy, so he is kind of a love interest in that respect, but Buffy doesn't really return that. So he's not necessarily a love interest for Buffy, you know, at this stage. I don't know if he ever truly becomes that. I don't know if Buffy ever will reciprocate that. But we'll have to wait and see, you know. So yeah, I kind of gave myself like a yes and no as to that prediction. Then the obvious one, Willow continues to be a cinnamon roll. Yes, of course, because she always will be. She has some really, really nice moments this season, so of course she's a cinnamon roll. I win. And then my final prediction was that there were going to be more Angel crossovers this season. And again, I put yes and no. Only because, yes, there were crossovers, because we had like Fool for Love, and we had like Angelus and Darla and Drusilla in that. And we had Drusilla turn up after what she'd gone through an Angel, so she was still quite burnt and stuff. So they were still like echoing the events of that. And obviously Angel turning up in Forever, pretty big Angel crossover. But I also put no because it's not as many as I thought it would be, and it wasn't quite as like plot-centric crossover as I thought we were going to get, which is fine. But I do think more so in Angel we got more like Buffy crossovers in Angel, because obviously Willow showed up a couple of times. Praise the Lord, let that happen again. So yeah, again I put yes and no, because we did get Angel crossovers, just not in the way I kind of expected. But that's not a bad thing by any means. So in terms of predictions for this season, I think I did a pretty good job. It was just more so I may have been along the right lines at times, but not quite accurate. But again, with the predictions, I do like doing them because I only do the predictions because people asked when I first started doing the reviews and stuff. People asked me to give predictions and stuff. That's the only reason I do it, because otherwise I wouldn't. And I do kind of just try and give more generic predictions then, because they're more likely that they'll be right, and I can feel good about myself. It's like couples being tested. Aren't I clever? Couples are going to be tested next season. Oh, I'm so good. But you know, I'm going to give myself the credit for it. So yeah, those are my predictions. I think I did a fairly decent job for this season. Obviously I couldn't have predicted Glory and Dawn arriving and Joyce dying, Buffy dying, all of that shit. That tragic, horrifying shit. But yeah, I think I did a good job of that. And breathe. Let's all take a break to have a drink. I've only got 1 bar down on my battery, so we'll see how this goes. How much longer can you hold out before I have to charge you? Who knows? But yeah, next is our character studies section. So again, I'm not going to talk about every single individual character who's in this season, just obviously the core characters and some individuals who are supporting cast members, supporting characters who I felt were worthy of a shout out or that I had something to say about, etc, etc. So yes, I think we're going to start off with the main cast. I know Tara isn't technically main cast, but I have included her in this little section because honestly she should be. I mean, she was around a lot of this season. So yeah, makes sense as always to start with Buffy. And I did talk a lot already about Buffy's arc in this season. It's one of my favourite things about it. It's probably one of my favourite arcs that the entire series has done, probably the entire Buffyverse has done. I mean, I love how much Angel has grown on his own show. And Cordelia's arc's been amazing as well. And you know, Wesley's kind of shaping up to have a really nice kind of change in him as well. But in terms of Buffy as a character, I think her arc this season was just sublime. Sarah Michelle Gellar was fantastic. And yeah, just kind of seeing her start out this season not knowing that her whole life had changed, because she just assumed that Dawn has always been around. She wanted to learn more about the past Slayers, because she was scared of herself almost, in that she felt like she was just being a predator on the vampires, and she was kind of losing herself to this darkness and succumbing to that, which is kind of an interesting parallel to what happens to Angel in season 2 of his show, which I only just picked up on, so I'll try and keep that note in mind for when I do my review of Angel. But yeah, she kind of started off this season like that, and in that place, and you know, she asked for Giles for help then. That was something I really wanted from the season as well, if they explored that. So I was really happy to see them kind of get Buffy to learn more about previous Slayers, and she was in the prime of her slaying abilities really, you know. I don't think she's ever been better as the Slayer as she is right now. And then we just see her learn all these things about Dawn and the Key and Glory, and she got beaten up by Glory a lot. Joyce's illness, so she had to worry about, you know, her Slayer life, but then she also had to worry about her personal life because her mum was suddenly sick and things with Riley weren't going too well. So therefore every aspect of her life she had something to worry about, you know. She couldn't just rest and be at peace. And yeah, finding out about Dawn and all that, and then she was having to be really protective of her. I do think there was a slight weight off her shoulders when she confided in Giles about Dawn, and Joyce realised the truth about Dawn, so she kind of had people to talk about that with. But even then, when she talked to them about that, Dawn overheard the fucking thing, so it all got exposed. So she just couldn't get a break this season. Season 5 was so unbelievably cruel to Buffy. And just the way life beat her down again and again, but she always got back up, even when she was in that comatose state and spiral. She got through it with Willow's help, and in the end, she was broken so much, and I think felt the world was against her because she was fighting a god that she knew she couldn't beat. And you know, her sister had been taken, her mum was gone, her boyfriend was gone, and then she just felt all alone in the world, and she had that moment where she was like, I just can't do this, and she kind of gave up for a second, and therefore she was even hating herself, and blaming herself for everything that had gone on. even when it wasn't necessarily her fault. I think she was trying to find a way to blame herself, because blaming others sometimes had kind of pushed them away from her. And then we kind of get to that whole final thing at the end of the season, where she sees a chance to be free of all that pain, and saving her little sister doing it, and saving the world doing it. And the way she kind of found peace was to sacrifice herself and kill herself, which is really tragic in many, many ways, but also quite lovely in that she found that peace that she'd been searching for. And, you know, she told Giles earlier in the episode, my god, the sun's really coming through now, I might close the curtain in a minute. She kind of said to Giles, you know, I don't know how to live in this world. You know, she even said that earlier in the episode, so that was kind of a lot of foreshadowing there. And ultimately she could make the choice not to, and she took that choice. And I think she did make peace with that in the end, you know. It wasn't like she wanted everyone there to like witness this grand thing she was about to do, and this grand sacrifice she was about to make. She didn't want people there for that. She made it all about Dawn. You know, it wasn't about herself dying. It was about, okay, I'm going to die. What does Dawn have to do? How does Dawn get through this? I'm going to help Dawn through this now. So she gave her that really lovely speech to cap off the season about, you know, living for her, and the hardest thing in this world is to live in it. And that's what Buffy learned this season. I think her arc came down to that one line: the hardest thing in this world is to live in it. Because she went through so much. She went through losses as the Slayer, but I think she went through even more loss as Buffy, as herself. And my god, the sun. That's better. Okay. So yeah, she suffered so many like losses and defeats and stuff before, as the Slayer, and a lot of the show has been about her loss as the Slayer, and also, you know, the real aspect of her personal life they've explored a lot on the show is obviously her romances and her loves. She experienced a lot of loss through that. But this season, she not only lost that again, and, you know, lost another boyfriend, but she lost her family, and the one member of her family who's kind of always been by her side in so many ways, apart from obviously in between season 2 and 3. And she said, you know, I loved Mum more than anything. So to just see how much the season beat her down and teach her that life is sucky, the fact that she made a noble sacrifice and was free of that life is tragically kind of beautiful in so many ways. So I just really, really loved her arc. It really demonstrated how strong a character she is and how strong a person she is. The amount she's had to face, and she's like, what, 20 years old? It's kind of unbelievable, and I think really, really inspiring. I think this is the season that really made me see why I think Buffy is such a cult icon, and such like a feminist icon and stuff like that. Because I've always known how badass she was, because she could kick anyone's ass, really. I mean, she fucking picked up a hammer that this like troll had and hit a god in the face with it. How badass is that? So the fact, I've always known she was like really capable and stuff like that, and she was having to grow up before her time, but even more so this season than ever before. I think she really had to face not only what it is to be the Slayer, and that the Slayer does lose every now and again. I think she also had to face being human in a way she never has to before. Because, you know, she died at the end of season 1. It's not like she hasn't died before. But she was still such a young girl then, and I don't feel like she had as much responsibility then, you know. I know Joyce would have been like beyond devastated if Buffy had stayed dead at the end of season 1, but, you know, she's a very capable woman. She could have carried on with her life. Buffy, when she died the second time, this time, she was leaving behind a little sister who was alone in the world, didn't have any family, because Dawn lost all her family this season. And, you know, she couldn't go without making sure Dawn was going to be okay. And I think she knew, obviously, like Xander and Willow and Spike even would definitely look after Glory, and I'm sure Giles would as well. But just seeing Buffy go on this journey in this arc, comparing to how she took her death in season 1, she was terrified of dying. She told Giles, I don't want to die. I'm 16 years old. To how peaceful she accepted it in this one. Seeing who she was then, who she is now, how much she's grown and been forced to grow and still stood standing. And the only time she really did take that plunge and fell was when she chose to, when she jumped off that thing into the portal. Because even, in the comatose state, she got out of it. Because she had her friends there. In that moment, she didn't want all her friends around her to hear like this grand speech she was giving to Dawn. It was just about making sure her little sister was okay. And then she kind of accepted her fate in a way she didn't in season 1 because of how much she's grown and changed and how badass she is, and off she went. Just such a stunning character arc for her this season. I absolutely adore her. I think this definitely helped her climb. I always really liked the character. Obviously, if you've seen my tier list that I did over Christmas, you'll know how much I love Buffy anyway. But this is like a whole other level of appreciation now. So it's inspiring what she's done this season. She chose to take that leap. She chose to fall at the end of the season. But she was at peace with it in a way she probably wouldn't have been if everything that happened to her this season hadn't have happened. I just think that's so brilliantly done, and Sarah Michelle Gellar performed it so brilliantly. So Buffy's arc this season, mwah, mwah, mwah. Rest in peace. I think he'll be back, but rest in peace. Just a fantastic arc for her. Buffy, I love her. Okay, I feel like I talked about her for a while, so let's move on. Xander is next. I feel like I don't have much to say about Xander this season. I feel like he just remained good old Xander, like season 4. Season 4 is still my favourite season for Xander. Mainly, I think, because he really bounced back for me from season 3, where I really didn't like him for a lot of it. And he just became like this really loyal friend and really funny guy again that I really enjoyed seeing glimpses of in the past. I think he's definitely growing up a lot more. And I think I was really relating to him trying to find a place in the world last season, and I feel like he's definitely got that a bit more now. He's got like a stable apartment. I assume he's got stable-ish jobs, because he didn't have as much trouble, it seems, this season. We didn't see him in as many different jobs. He was doing the carpentry in the magic box, which was really cool. And he seems to really enjoy that as well, so that was really good for him to actually find himself something to do that he really likes and is really good at. He has a stable relationship with Anya, who he's now engaged to. He's definitely kind of got his life sorted out, all the while being the same Xander we kind of know and love at times. Every now and again, the odd inappropriate joke, as you do, Xander. But I think he has grown and matured so much, and the support he's kind of shown in this season to Buffy in like the result of Joyce's death, standing up for Tama and family. He's a very supportive person, I feel like. Whereas in the early seasons, he could very easily slip into being quite selfish. In a way, I think he's kind of broken that habit quite a lot. Everyone has moments, I think, of selfishness. But I think Xander's just always there to be on your side, having grown so much since season 1. And I don't feel like he's had as much of an arc this season. He's kind of just been around just to be supportive. He's definitely had like some moments. I feel like he really kind of, I think a big thing I think of this season for Xander was Into the Woods, where he gave that speech to Anya at the end. He's like, I'm in love with you. I'm in this for the long haul with you. It's not just like any old relationship or a bit of fun. It's not that anymore. That was Xander kind of growing up. And I think that was a big thing this season. It was him having found potential things to ground him and allow him to find this place in the world. This season was him latching onto those things and making commitments to those things by getting an apartment, getting a girlfriend, getting engaged, all that kind of jazz, while also being a capable member of the Scoobies and supporting his friends as he always does. So yeah, Xander as always continues to be great. He's on great form as always, like he was last season. Maybe we could have had like another Xander-centric episode later on in the season, because we had the replacement. I feel like we didn't really get another Xander-centric one after that this season. But again, like in the body, when he was being really supportive of Willow, and his grief took over and he punched a hole in the wall. It's another relatable kind of experience people go through when they grieve. I just feel like there's still more room to grow for Xander, and that's kind of what excites me about him. I love to get to know his family better. I can't believe we haven't met his parents properly yet. We've seen his dad, but that was like Restless, wasn't it? That was like a dream sequence. I don't think we've seen them outside of that. Even Willow, we met her mum like once, did we? So I feel like maybe this is just a show about like moving on with your parents and not being around them, because all the parents kind of are dying in this show now. So I guess that's kind of what they're going for. But yeah, overall, Xander was fantastic in this season, as he was last season. I really love how much he's grown and matured, and seeing him kind of settle down and start to settle down. It's been really, really nice to watch, particularly because of how lost he seemed last season. So that was great. Willow. Let's talk about Willow for 25 years. I could talk about Willow for 25 years, but I probably shouldn't. I don't think my camera would last 25 years. So, it's no surprise, I love Willow. In case you didn't know, she's my favourite. I don't think I've made that very clear. And I really enjoyed them really pushing her this season with the magic. That's a very interesting side to her character arc, in that when things get tough, magic, let's do a spell. When Dawn wanted to bring Joyce back, magic, magic, take the magic. When Glory went all brainy, gooey stuff to Tara, magic, let's kill her. Bzzz. And that was badass, and I loved it. And in the finale, she was like, she's with me. Bzzz, love her. I just got chills thinking of that scene. It was so cool. And just seeing her get stronger and stronger with magic. It is nice that she has people like Tara in her life to kind of ground her at times and keep her on the straight and narrow sometimes. Obviously Tara wasn't around in Tough Love, for example, and in The Gift, from where she went all like black eyes, bzzz. Otherwise she probably would have stopped Willow from doing that and getting that far. But the reason, Willow even did that in the first place was because of what happened to Tara. So seeing her grow with this magic thing and just get stronger and stronger is a very interesting thing. And I quite like that, we see Buffy get stronger and stronger, and it's like, oh, that's so badass, she's the Slayer, she's doing really good, she's at the prime of her life. And, she's getting better and better at what she does all the time. Willow's doing the same thing with magic, but people are kind of scared of it. In a way they're not scared with Buffy kind of enhancing her abilities. Willow's enhancing hers just the same, but it could be a much more terrifying prospect. And I do like that they treat that very differently. And it's not just like, oh yeah, she can do all these really cool spells, it's really badass. They give magic consequences and a price in this show, because otherwise they just do magic for every little problem. It'd be too easy, You could just watch an episode and be like, well, why didn't Willow just cast a spell to make the troll explode? It's because magic has consequences, and magic scares people. And magic can easily go wrong. There's dark magic. So that's a very interesting thing that they've done with Willow, and I do miss like techie Willow. I wish they kind of still kept that, but again, moving on from tech to magic is kind of course you'd leave like the technology behind, because that's probably feels quite limited compared to what you can do with magic, and actually getting to cast these spells yourself instead of just typing things on a keyboard probably feels a bit more exciting and a bit more like you're actually doing something yourself when it comes to magic. So I can kind of understand why I left that side of her character behind, and it was a reason Spike kind of easily manipulated her at the end of last season, was because she kind of left that behind in favour of magic as well. And her relationship with Tara is going to kind of lead her to leave that behind, because Tara's also a witch. So yeah, everything with Willow this season I've really, really enjoyed. And her relationship with Tara still proves to be very, very sweet. I get a lot of people ask if I still prefer Willow and Oz. I do. That's not going to change probably. People are like, oh, you're absolutely going to change your mind. No, but that's fine. And I completely get why people would love Willow and Tara. Can't remember what episode it was. I think it was in the first half of the season. It might have been like Shadow listening to Fear. I think it was around then at the season. It's the scene when Willow and Tara were like stargazing or stuff like that. And I was just like, oh, Tara wants to show Willow the stars. And that was really, really adorable. And they do have a very, very sweet relationship. And I do like that Tara is around to ground Willow on occasions. And Willow's commitment to Tara after the whole Glory thing in Tough Love, I think was so moving. The fact that even if Tara was never going to get any better, Willow was still going to stick around and still be with her because it's her girl. That was so wholesome. I did really, really love that, and I do really like their relationship. It's just Willow's was personally very special to me, just like Tara and Willow is very special to so many of you. And you know, power to all of us, I say, because we all want Willow's happiness, and Willow's happy with Tara, Tara's very happy with Willow, and I'm glad to see both of them happy because they both deserve it. So yeah, I do like their relationship a lot, and I've loved Willow's growth this season. And since we're on the topic of Tara, let's talk about her next. Because I love that we kind of got a full season to get to know her at last, and we got like the Tara-centric episode in Family, which I really, really liked that episode a lot. Got some answers as to why she sabotaged the spell in the last season. She thought she was like half demon or whatever, and the family were kind of manipulating all the females because they're dickheads. They were like trying to cast her out, but Tara was she was very struggling in the early episodes, which is why she got on with Dawn so well, to find a place in the Scoobies. It was a very similar thing when Dawn came along and she didn't really have a place because she'd only just arrived. Little did they know that. And Tara was kind of going through the same thing, feeling very, very left out, and that's why she sympathised with Dawn. Then by the time Family came around, I love how everyone just stood up for her and they all welcomed her into their arms. One of my favourite Xander moments this season, actually, was when he walked in. I think he saw like Willow and Tara there, and he was like, oh, it's my two favourite girls. And that was just so wholesome, and it just feels so right and so natural that Tara's part of this group, and she's really found a place to fit in. Even if she is a witch like Willow, I feel like she certainly has a better moral compass. Because Willow's my cinnamon roll, and I absolutely love her, we know this, but I still hold her accountable. I still am aware she has many flaws, and she goes way too far sometimes. She commits to things way too much sometimes. And what I really like about Tara is that she can reel Willow in at times, but Tara does that for many different characters. I think she's kind of found that bravery in herself, and she doesn't stutter as much anymore. She feels like she can say and stand up for herself and stand up for other characters. So I remember her once, like, she stood up to Xander once, I think it was in Triangle, to Willow and Anya. She was like, leave Xander out of this, he's not part of this. So seeing her kind of grow and find her place in the group has been really, really cool, really, really satisfying, and I do really, really love Tara's character a lot. I think she's so, so sweet. We do need to perform a defensive shield around her, protect her from the world, and I'm really glad we kind of also got to see how good of an actress Amber is. Because when she got all glorified, those last couple of episodes of the season, I think she portrayed that so, so brilliantly, and you just felt so desperately sorry for her. And just the way she was like reaching out for Willow, or she was like making like these crying noises and stuff like that. I think, Amber was fantastic throughout this whole season. Probably quite an underrated performance, really, when you think the contrast to how Tara is normally to what happened after Glory got to her. So she was fantastic as well. I think Amber's a fantastic actress. And I really liked Tara's journey of finding this place in the group. And everyone kind of learning that she's their family. Because Willow kind of considered Tara's family, and therefore, if she's Willow's family, and Willow was everyone else's family, all the Scooby's family, of course Tara's family too. And I just loved that they stood up for her so, so quickly. It's still fairly early in the season, was that family episode, but they all thought of her as family that early on, and I think that's very, very wholesome. So yeah, all of that was so great. I loved Tara's journey. I look forward to seeing where things go next. I'm not quite sure what to predict for Tara. I don't really know where her story's going, and I think that's why I'm excited to see more of her. Hopefully we get another couple of Tara-centric episodes, because family was really, really great. So that'd be really cool, and yeah, I really, really liked Tara a lot, and long may it continue. I'm looking forward to seeing what she might do next, and what's going to happen, like, outside of just, like, the witch stuff or the cottage stuff. I like to learn a bit more about, like, her interest and stuff outside of just Willow and witches. I think that could be kind of cool. I did love this season when they paired Tara with other characters. Her scene with Buffy in the body was so, so good. She had a scene with Anya in I Was Made to Love You, I think. That was really, really good. So I like Tara kind of paired off with other characters. I think that's a sign of a good character when you could put them in a scene with any other character, and I think they'd have a really interesting conversation and a really interesting interaction. Tara's one of those characters. And I think that's obviously just a sign of a really great character. So yeah, Tara's great. I really like her. Giles. Let's talk about Giles. Whew. Again, it was another kind of Xander situation, I think, for the most part, where Giles was very lost in season 4. In between jobs, still not really finding a place in the world. And season 5 was Giles rebuilding that in both being a watcher again for Buffy and helping her, like, research the history of the past Slayers and have, like, a proper training room in the magic box, and getting the magic box itself. He's getting this business for himself, and seeing him be so excited about that when he got, like, his first customer and stuff. He was really, like, hyper and wholesome about it. And yet we have Giles like that, and we have, like, really funny moments. He still has, like, some killer one-liners. Giles gets some stunning lines. And then alongside that, you get scenes like in The Gift, where he just, like, puts his glasses on and just snuffs the life out of Ben and Glory. Giles killed a god, technically. And considering how different those two aspects of Giles' personality are, you feel like they shouldn't really blend. But they really do. Both those kind of moments of character for Giles feel like Giles, even though take a look at, like, Giles and he's all happy that, you know, he's, oh, I've got a customer, oh. Then you see him murder a guy, and it's like, yeah, that's Giles. How that works, I don't know. But I think that, again, comes from writing and Anthony Head's incredible performance, as he always delivers. So yeah, seeing Giles kind of really find his feet again, bounce back from the events of season 4 in a really positive way, that was really nice to see. His constant support of Buffy, particularly in Checkpoint. He was, like, trying to help her out when the council were, like, doing stuff. Just being, like, the proud father figure that Buffy's never really had, I think, for a while. And that scene in Spiral where he got injured and stuff, and he might have thought he was going to die, and one of the last things he wanted Buffy to know was that he was really proud of her. Such a wholesome bond that those two have. I absolutely adore it. And Giles' face at the end when he lost Buffy and saw her body there. Oh boy, that was pain. That was pain. But you can just see there's still a lot of Ripper in Giles from when he, like, killed Ben. But he can still be such a gentle and loving guy, and I love that. Because you are, you know, you're like a combination of all the people you used to be, and Ripper was, you know, such a big part of Giles' past and such a big part of who he is and was. I think deep down Giles knows that that side of him sometimes is necessary, as we saw in The Gift, where he was the one who had to suggest maybe we have to kill Dawn, because then no one else had to be the one to say it. So that shows a lot of strength in him that I really, really admire. The fact that he is the one who has to go there sometimes because that's his job, that's his duty. And yeah, standing up to Buffy in that scene, he, like, just lost it. Whenever Giles shouts, that is some scary shit. And he was quite terrifying in The Gift on many occasions, but he can also be such a sweet man. And that blend, I don't think could work with many characters, but with Giles it just does. because he's such a layered and complex character at this point. I just love that he's always there for Buffy and he's always there for everyone. He has some really great interactions with all the other characters. I always do have a soft spot for scenes with him and Spike. I think they bounce off each other quite well. And him and Anya, that pairing this season I think is a goldmine when he asked her to work for him and stuff like that. So it's just great to see him back on his feet again, but still very much has all these different aspects and layers to his personality that we know and love with Giles. So yeah, he's been fantastic this season, but that's kind of what I say every season at this point. It's a bit of a broken record when it comes to Giles because he's been phenomenal since the pilot. So yes, Giles is fantastic. Anya, God, we're not even finished with the main cast yet. I've still got another 3 people to talk about after this. We're going to be here for so long, I'm sorry. Yeah, Anya. I've really grown to adore her. I absolutely love her. She's so funny. I love that she's still not quite there in terms of reminding herself of what it is to be human and relearning all these things because it's been so long since she was human. I think that provides a lot of the much needed laughs in some episodes. She's so capable of making me cry with laughter and cry from sorrow. Her speech in the body has stuck with me in, well, every single day in like the 3.5 weeks since I watched the episode. So good. Emma's performance in that is incredible. And I just love that aspect of her character. Allows the show to explore things they may not have done before, or they can explore aspects of humanity and like the human condition with Anya in ways they couldn't do with other characters who are used to being human without it like feeling like, oh, they're just forcing this down our throats. You know, it just feels really like forced. But with Anya, she genuinely doesn't know how to be human, so they can do that kind of thing. And it's just another layer of storytelling they can achieve, and another kind of exploration of what it is to be human and the human mind. They can just achieve that with Anya. And I think that works so well as a character for both laughs and heartbreak. It's just the range Anya has as a character, I think, is it's kind of incredible. And I love her relationship with Xander. I think they're very wholesome together. When she was like admitting in the gift that she's scared for herself and for him, and she feels guilty about not feeling as worried for the others. That's a huge step forward. So we're seeing that evolution. It's not like they're just sticking to her not understanding stuff so they can keep using that joke. They are developing her as well, and I love seeing that. So while she can always be this really funny character with a lot of great one-liners, you know, she's been the standout of several episodes this season for me. She's also kind of starting to grasp what it is, and getting engaged I think might really help that, or it might send her over the edge. Wedding prep. I can't imagine Anya preparing for a wedding without it being disastrous, so we'll see where that goes. I imagine that'll be a lot of comedy stuff next season, if they even, for all I know, season 6 episode 1 they're married. I don't know. That'd be sad though, because I'm sure Buffy's going to come back, you know, and I want her to be at the wedding if they get married. So maybe they should wait. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I think it'd be sad if they get married in between seasons and Buffy wasn't there. Anyway, yeah, love Anya. Loved her little journey this season and how we're still getting some teasers of development to her while, you know, they still can use those really funny jokes with her. I think she's really coming to her own in a great way. I never expected her to join like the main cast when she was first introduced. Obviously I did get spoiled that she was going to be becoming more of a main character when she first appeared, which is kind of a shame. But she really has flourished, and she really does shine a lot in many scenes. She can break my heart and she can make me laugh, probably in a way unlike most other characters, honestly. Like it's like genuine like belly laughter when it comes to Anya at times. An absolute just floods of tears. I think she's a very unique and interesting character in that aspect of things, and she's really coming to her own. I absolutely love her a lot. Probably her best season for me. I really loved her. Okay, let's talk about Spike next, and he's had a very interesting journey this season as well, and it's something that kind of kicked off really with Out of My Mind with episode 4, because before that it was kind of same old Spike we'd seen in season 4, which obviously I still loved, because was about to say who doesn't love Spike, but I know there are some people who watch my videos who don't like Spike. Absolutely fine, so I won't say that. But yeah, I think his journey this season has been oddly humanising, I would say. But that does tie into a bit of one of the themes I have for this season, which I can talk about Spike a bit there as well. Well, a couple of the themes actually kind of tie into this. So I'll kind of speak more to that later on. But Spike is Spike, love him or hate him. Personally, I love him, so it's good. And yeah, he's had some killer lines this season. James Masters is always so charismatic in the role for me. I just absolutely love seeing him. Start of the season I was kind of like wishing for that Spike-centric episode, because he was kind of popping up in like 1 or 2 scenes and it wasn't really, you know, part of like the main story, and I was like, come on. Then we got a Fall for Love. Damn, son. Which was awesome. I just loved seeing like his past and actually seeing him kill the 2 Slayers that they told us about previously in season 2. And how all of this had kind of been tied into him realising he's in love with Buffy, which was quite the revelation at the end of episode 4. And the way he could kind of play like the shy teenager, almost like the shy kid trying to talk to his crush, was very, very funny. Oddly endearing for Spike as well, because, you know, he still had the creepy moments this season. The Buffy shrine, the Buffy bot, not ideal, but, you know, that is what a soulless vampire would do, and that's how vampires love, I guess. I mean, you know, his plan to win Drusilla back in Lover's Walk was to like torture her until she liked him again, so it's a very twisted version of love and affection, but we do have some real moments of humanity with Spike, like I was saying, like when he tried to comfort Buffy. The fact that he calls Willow Will, you know, he has a nickname for someone, outside of just Slayer. And even then, he like calls her Buffy now, I think, more than Slayer, which I think has probably come from him, you know, developing feelings for her. His relationship with Dawn this season has been really, really wholesome. And I really have enjoyed seeing that side to Spike. I think an episode like Fall for Love was kind of needed if you were going to keep Spike around for a long time and have him be a main cast member. Because Seven, he used to be like the big bad. You can't have him kind of interact with the Scoobies lots and have him be like play a major role in things if you're not going to allow the audience to get to know him a bit better and maybe at times sympathise with him and understand, or maybe not sympathise with him, understand where he came from, why he is the way he is. And I think Fall for Love did give us that in spades with some of those flashbacks and seeing him as William and become Spike. All of that, I really, really enjoyed getting backstory for him this season, really fleshing him out. And yeah, just giving him more and more complex layers, because for every comforting Buffy at the end of Fall for Love, for example, or every moment he promised to protect Dawn until the end of the world, or he recognised that Buffy would never love him. There are the Buffy bot moments, which granted were very funny and the episode did play to be funny, but still creepy, and Buffy Shrine, of course, is creepy. But that is down to Spike's character, and I think that, of course, is going to... How you take those scenes and how you take Spike as a character is obviously just going to be down to personal preference and personal taste as to whether or not you enjoy Spike or not. I think he is one of the more divisive characters of the show, at least the main cast. Maybe not including Riley, although he's not necessarily divisive, because I think he just is hated by most. But yeah, I think Spike really is like the Marmite of Buffy in many ways, although I don't like Marmite, but I like Spike, so... But yeah, I have really enjoyed seeing some more kind of human moments from him, and I think it was a necessary thing to do with the character, and somewhat redeem him, or at least make him tolerable to the Scoobies, if you were going to keep him around. And I'm glad they've decided to keep him around, because Spike's so much fun. And, you know, his appearance in Season 3, he was only in 1 episode that season, but it was still like a standout episode, and he had a really cool speech in it, and, you know, he still really stood out, even though he was in 1 episode, which I think says a lot about how I love that character. So yeah, his journey this season's been really, really interesting. His reaction to Buffy's death at the end broke me. But I do like that it is possible for him to show care and affection. Because when he thought it was the Buffy bot he was speaking to, he did open up a bit and said, I couldn't stand to see Buffy in pain, see Dawn suffer and stuff like that. So I think he does have these moments of William coming about, the poet that's deep, deep down inside of him, that kind of wholesome cinnamon roll side of him when he was human. Was it Cecily? Was that the woman he was in love with, who he wrote the poem for? I think the way William loved is just... I think Spike tries to love in the same way, but because he now has a demon in him, he sees this as the same way of loving someone. But it just doesn't work, because he's kind of evil. And I think that's a very interesting kind of thing, because sometimes he can be genuinely sweet and affectionate and really loving, but a lot of the time he gets it completely wrong when it came to trying to woo Buffy or getting her good books and stuff like that. But whenever he does something wrong, you get a moment where he leaves flowers for Joyce, but he doesn't put a name in the card because he doesn't want credit for it. Or he helps Dawn try and bring Joyce back, but doesn't want Buffy to know that he helped. Stuff like that. It's a very complicated thing with Spike, I think. And that's why I enjoy his scenes so much, because he could probably do literally anything, to the craziest extreme, to the sweetest, tiniest little act. I'm oh, that's such a Spike thing to do. And yet it's such a wide range of things, and you never know what to expect from Spike when you look at it like that. And I think that's why I love seeing him so much, and why I like him interacting with the Scoobies and these people he has this adversarial relationship with. I love a good redemption arc, and I love seeing someone who used to be an enemy of someone become in their social circle, and I just eat that kind of thing up. And Spike's a very, very good example of that. So I loved him this season. I love seeing the more human sides to him, quite literally in the flashbacks. And I don't know where he's going to go next, and that also intrigues me, as it always does with journeys like that. So yeah, Spike, so much fun as always this season. I really, really loved him. I'm intrigued as to where they could go with the whole falling in love with Buffy thing. I don't know if they could drag that on for another 2 seasons. I feel like something's going to happen, or he's going to get over it. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm excited for the future, because I love every single second Spike's on screen. So Spike, awesome as always. Then we talk about Dawn. I've already said quite a bit earlier on when I was talking about the season as a whole and Dawn's role and things, and how hard it must have been for Michelle to kind of come into the show at such a late stage. Over halfway through its run, and we're introducing a new main character. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. While she was kind of essential to the story arc of the season, the story arc kind of did revolve around her and as the key and stuff like that. They still did give her a character, and she wasn't just the mystery of what she was. She was Buffy's little sister. She could easily embarrass herself in front of people she had a crush on. She very easily switched crushes, because she had Xander, then Spike, and God knows what else will be coming. And it's another case of really kind of the extreme version of Buffy, in that she had to grow up before her time, because she was literally 6 months old when she was made into this 14-year-old girl by people who may not have been the experts on what a 14-year-old girl should be. And all things considered, I think she coped remarkably well when she found out she was the key. I know, it got quite dark with self-harming and stuff. I don't think I would have coped in the slightest. I don't think I'd have ever gotten over it, but I think Dawn had a lot of good people around her to help her through that. Willow and Tara were especially supportive after Joyce died, and obviously Buffy was a big help in that too. And just seeing this kind of bratty teen at the start getting in the way of Buffy's training and stuff when we first saw her, just being the typical stereotype, I guess, of the teenage girl writing in her diary, complaining about her big sister, making out with all her boyfriends, and saying how no one understands her. I really liked that because we didn't understand her when she was saying that. You don't know the real me. Of course we fucking don't. You just turned up. I really liked that kind of play on what actually has happened with the audience as well, because they don't know who this girl is. And then when we found out that she was the key, Buffy found out at the same time, and that might have given you a different kind of perspective on it. I think Dawn, as you see her in like Real Me and in The Gift, you know, so willing to sacrifice herself. So we start her kind of craving for attention from everyone at the start of the season, and at the end she's willing to sacrifice her life for everyone else, which is quite astounding. I think a lot of that she learnt from Buffy, because, you know, we have these moments of affection. I think it is episode 5, I think it's No Place Like Home. The episode ends with like a really silent scene. Buffy is just stroking Dawn's hair, just like reaching to stroke her hair. That's how the episode ends. And then the body ends with Dawn reaching out to stroke Joyce's hair or touch Joyce's face, you know. So that at a moment of care and affection. So I felt like she did pick up some things from Buffy like that. And, you know, she felt responsible for what happened to Tara. She felt really guilty about that. That conversation she had with Spike, I thought was very, very interesting in that episode. When it's another lovely Spike moment I liked, actually, when he's like, I know evil, you're not it. And Dawn was like, well, maybe I'm not evil, but I don't think I can ever be good. And I think she was trying to be good at the end of The Gift, where she was like going to sacrifice herself. But yeah, when she like got a sandwich for Tara and stuff like that, like wanted to help feed her, it was kind of crazy to see how far she's come just in like one season, and how she dealt with the truth about herself. I think that's probably a lot of strength that she got from Buffy, because obviously she was made from Buffy. Maybe if the gift had, you know, well, not the gift, the key had been given to another family, or even another Slayer. Imagine if Faith had been given a little sister. The key would have been fucked. But yeah, I just think the monks were very lucky that the Slayer was Buffy at the time, because Buffy is so good as a Slayer because of the people around her. And I think Dawn was so safe as the key and learned so much and coped so well because of the people around her and the people in Buffy's life, that she could share. So I think she just learned so much. You've seen a lot of growth in her already. She had to lose her mum, and then she had to lose her sister, and she had to deal with, you know, quite literal identity crisis. Not even knowing if she was really real or deserved to be real. Which could have been another reason she was willing to do what she wanted to do at the end of The Gift. She was like, you know, I haven't even been here this whole time anyway. Maybe I shouldn't be here now. Maybe I should be sacrificing myself for this. But obviously Buffy didn't allow that to happen, which I think is fair. So yeah, I actually really, really like Dawn. I know she's another polarising character in the fandom. I don't know where things are going to go with her. She did have her moments and I was like, oh my god, you're so annoying. But that was quite early on in the season. And, you know, a lot of the characters went through a lot of stuff, particularly in the second half of the season. That's where things really ramped up, I think. Which I think is echoed in the favourite episodes that you guys voted for. Because basically the first half of the season is like the bottom half of your list. So it's kind of interesting. And yeah, I really, really like Dawn, actually. She's not like my absolute favourite by any means. But I think she's brought something to the show that I didn't really know I wanted. And she brought out this other side of Buffy. She was part of a really interesting story arc. But in herself, she's displayed a lot of growth and a lot of maturity for a 6-month-old, 14-year-old. So yeah, I quite like Dawn a lot, and I look forward to seeing what's going to happen next and how she might cope without Buffy, for example. It's just another Summers girl forced to grow up before her time, really. I mean, say, she didn't get to enjoy her childhood. She didn't get a childhood, really. She has the memories of one, but she didn't actually live it. which is kind of sad, the tragedy behind that. So the fact that she's kind of coped with that is incredible, really. Says a lot about the strength of the Summer's blood, I guess. So yeah, I like Dawn, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with her in the future. And then final for the main cast, then we can actually move on to the secondary characters. Riley, who I am in the minority, I think, when I actually quite like Riley. I liked that he was like the normal guy for Buffy at first, and then we got the initiative reveal and stuff. But I enjoyed what they were trying to do with him and his ties to the initiative, that being torn, and the fact that because of him, they had to introduce Forrest, and therefore Forrest got to die twice. So I really like that about Riley. Thanks, Riley. And yeah, I think he just tried his best, and he was manipulated by Walsh in the initiative, and he didn't quite understand how to control his self at times. And yes, he had some lines, a lot of lines, but I was exactly the same with Angel in the early seasons of the show, so I can't really hold that against him particularly. And maybe given more time, Riley could have really developed into a more interesting character, because yeah, he's not like the most exciting guy. But I did feel bad for him in the end. And it's just kind of the way of the world in that he was kind of brainwashed, I think, into thinking he only had worth when he was in the initiative, and that was kind of his downfall as soon as that all went away. So he had like these moments where he was like, oh, this is wrong, I need to exclude myself from this, without realising that whole thing was basically his life, and he didn't have anything once he stepped away from it. And he's like, well, I have Buffy, but then I think it very quickly dawned on him that Buffy didn't love him back, so he didn't have anything. And I actually feel really bad for him that everything was kind of taken away from him, so he had to end up just going back to doing what he did best. I actually do think his arc in season 5, they made it more personally about him, in the fact that it's not just the initiative or the Scoobies. It was Riley being torn between the part of himself that was still tied to the initiative with like the drugs and his fast heart rate and stuff like that. If they take that away, he's just a very insecure person, and that's something I can relate to very strongly. So maybe that's why I kind of really feel for Riley in a lot of situations like that. I can understand why he might feel like he's a bit worthless and not good enough for Buffy. Well, at the same time, Buffy was going through thinking she wasn't good enough herself. So I think that's another reason why they kind of just pass each other by the end of it all, quite literally and into the woods. So yeah, hopefully he's found some happiness wherever he went. I can't remember exactly where it was they said he was going. Africa or something, I feel like. But yeah, I just felt bad for the guy that it just wasn't going to work out with Buffy. I did actually really enjoy the friendship he was kind of forming with Xander. It was nice to kind of have another guy in like the main squad. We technically kind of have Spike as well. So we have like Xander, Giles and Spike. But I did like what they were trying to do with Riley, having a friendship there. It was nice for him to have like legitimate friendship forming, but it wasn't meant to be in the end because things fall apart as life does. Well, this season's basically all about that. And yeah, I did like him being torn about, am I good enough? And a lot of that does come down to, I think, the toxic masculinity that he kind of represented, particularly last season. So yeah, Riley, not my favourite. He's okay. I will defend him in some aspects, others I won't. Sometimes he did snap a bit and I was like, come on, man. He did have his lower moments, but overall, I do think it was kind of interesting to, someone had to be the guy who came after Angel for Buffy. It had to be someone. Riley kind of took the bullet for that. So I think anyone who came after Angel was going to suffer for coming after Angel. So it's just unfortunate circumstances, I guess, where Riley's concerned. But for what he was and what he represented, I think they had a few interesting ideas going for him. I think they just needed a bit more time to work on him. But that time we did not have. So yeah, I can't say I particularly think there's a Riley-shaped hole in the show. I don't think there is, in all honesty. But I liked the guy. He was okay. He tried, and I think that's all we can really ask for. So yeah, that was Riley. I don't know if we'll ever see him again. I don't think we need to, but if he does show up, fine, cool. I'll be excited to see where he's been and what he's up to and if he's changed or not. So yeah, that's the main characters. So now we'll talk about all the supporting ones I wanted to mention and discuss, etc, etc. And we're going to start with Glory, the big bad, of course. I might include Ben in this a bit. I'll try and talk about them kind of separately, because they're technically separate, technically not. But yeah, I've already mentioned already, Glory was a fantastic big bad. Claire Kramer was so good. I loved just how nuts she was and how evil she could be at times. I really liked the relationship she had with her minions. I think that was the kind of difference that really made her enjoyable compared to other big bads for me. Just her interactions with them all, and it was kind of a hot, cold, love-hate relationship she had with every single one of them. I really liked that. I really enjoyed her commentary when she was fighting people. I thought that was kind of endearing. And you could just tell how batshit crazy she was, really, and this grand scheme she had to open portals between dimensions and all sorts of stuff. It wouldn't have been pleasant if that had all gone through, so glad they stopped her, but she was a lot of fun. I loved her interactions with all her minions and the constant quest for the key, and as a physical threat as well. She was very demanding, and she beat Buffy in a fight a lot more times than Buffy ended up beating her, so you have to give her that. I think she was a very physically imposing enemy, but didn't also need to be violent in order to feel threatening. And she also had, some really funny moments and some human moments, I guess, like when she was just casually having a bath. I found that quite bizarre, that there was just this god just having a bath. And maybe some of that was just from Ben bleeding through. She was doing some human things because of that. But she clearly liked to be pampered and spoiled and stuff like that. So very different from the big bad we've seen previously, and I really, really liked that. It's good that they changed it up and we had an actual god to fight. Surely any big bad now will be nothing compared to a god. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed Glory. I thought, the actress did a fantastic job. She was threatening. I really did buy into what she wanted to do with the key. The dynamic between her and Ben sharing a body was an interesting kind of twist that added another layer to her, quite literally. And then when they started bleeding into each other in the last couple of episodes of the season, I thought that was another really interesting idea. And the fact that they couldn't really stop her also made her very interesting. It was they only properly stopped her because Giles killed Ben. It was the only way to really get rid of her, and that shows how powerful a foe she was. And I really, really liked that a lot. So yeah, Glory was a fantastic big bad. I would say, Angelus is probably still my favourite big bad. I think Glory would be second, honestly. I think, I'd go for that. I think it would be Angelus, Glory, then the Mayor, I think. So yeah, she was fantastic. She was so much fun to watch as well. It wasn't it's heartbreaking whenever Angelus was on screen, because of the whole ties to Buffy and everything. But Glory was just an evil bitch, and she knew it and she loved it, and I really enjoyed that. And I think they used her quite sparingly at times in the first half of the season, and I think they used her the perfect amount. Sometimes Angelus didn't need to be in some of the episodes in season 2, but I think every time Glory was in an episode, she really needed to be there. She made a really good impact right from the start, and yeah, she was a really great foe, and I really enjoyed seeing her. And the tie to Ben was a very interesting kind of twist that I wasn't expecting. And that was one thing about this season as well in terms of twists. There was a lot of really shocking endings in a way that it didn't make me miss not having a proper to be continued two-parter earlier in the season or whatever. So I love me a good two-parter, but we had a lot of moments of episodes whoa with their endings. So we didn't really need a distinct to be continued all the time. We might have had one in the season, I can't remember, but I think a lot of that came from Glory's constant presence in the season, so that worked really, really well. And then Ben, I liked him enough when we first introduced to him. I figured he was going to be like a love interest for Buffy. Kind of was for like a scene and when he asked her out, but then she kind of cancelled, and yeah, he was obviously made infinitely more interesting when he turned out to be the body that Glory was in, and sharing that provided a lot of laughs and some interesting stuff there. And ultimately he kind of gave in to what Glory wanted and helped out with getting Dawn ready for the whole ceremony and stuff. But that's because he didn't want to die. I feel like you can understand that. And it's an interesting parallel to see that compared to Buffy, who accepted her death. And Ben didn't in the end. You know, he wanted to live, he fought to live. He still ended up dying. And I thought that was kind of interesting as well. So while he wasn't like a big standout character for me in the season, I think the most important thing about him, the most interesting thing about him, was that he was also Glory. And you can stop your goddamn comments now about Ben and Glory. Bad enough. Yeah, he was okay. And at first I actually quite liked him. He just seemed like a nice guy, in a similar vein to how I liked Riley. I did kind of want to see Ben and Buffy kind of test the waters there. But wasn't meant to be, because he was also a woman. So there you are. Yeah. So, good guy, I think led astray by circumstance. He didn't ask to be Glory in a way that Buffy didn't ask to be the Slayer. Dawn didn't ask to be the Key. So they kind of all, how that all kind of blends together for this season is another really interesting thing. So yeah, Ben was okay. I've already kind of mentioned the minions of Glory's. I really liked their inclusion. I liked the designs of them as well. I thought the makeup on them looked pretty cool. Jinx was by far my favourite. The actor playing Jinx I really, really enjoyed, so I've mentioned him specifically on here. But just the idea of like these little like hooded minions all like working for Glory. There was just something about it. I don't quite know what it was that I really enjoyed about it, but it really was good fun seeing them, and they had some really funny moments, like when one of them made that pun in the finale, then instantly got shot. So yeah, they were kind of fun. They're kind of a bit of exposition at times, and to bridge the gap between Ben and Glory, obviously. But Jinx was definitely my favourite. I really, really liked him, the actor specifically. So yeah, they were fun little additions as well. They allowed a bit of cannon fodder for the final battle, I guess, as well. So good on you, minions. Rest in peace to most of you. I don't know if they all survived or if they all got out or they all died. Whatever. It doesn't matter. They have no one to serve anyway now, so there we are. And then we have the Knights of Byzantium, which I only remember because Byzantium was in Doctor Who. It's the only reason I remember their name. I actually wrote down Knights. I could have done without those people. That just felt a bit weird to me. They didn't necessarily take anything away from the season. I just feel like we didn't really need them there. Apart from obviously to get some exposition about what Glory's plan was in Spiral. That was about all they really had to offer. I feel like they could have just done that in a different way. Although it was very bizarre to just see them, you know, fighting these like armoured up knights on like an RV thing. Very, very bizarre, but I did enjoy seeing it, but I honestly could have done without those guys. It felt a bit weird, and their use in the season I don't think was ideal. They were in like I think they were in like Checkpoint. I think that might have been their first appearance. Then they were kind of forgotten about until like Spiral. I think they weren't really in it a lot or enough for them to feel like it was worth it. I think that was the real issue maybe, as opposed to the concept. I think it was just the fact that they weren't in it enough and we didn't get to learn enough about them and their history and stuff like that. So yeah, they were there and now they're gone. Then Harmony I wanted to talk about briefly because I absolutely love Harmony so much. Whenever she shows up on the show, she's so much fun, she's so funny, particularly this season. I think she has a lot of funny moments, like her fight with Xander, the slow motion fight, brilliant. The line I mentioned earlier about the no smoking sign, hilarious, easily my favourite moment for her. And just that continual kind of toxic relationship she had going on with Spike, the fact that she kept coming back. Yeah, she just brought a very interesting kind of dynamic to the show and an element of lightheartedness. You know, when Harmony first popped up in an episode, you'd be like, oh yeah, we're in for a fun episode then if Harmony's here. like Real Me, for example. It was cool to see her try and like take charge and have like a group of her own. Obviously that all backfired because of who Harmony is. So it was interesting. They kind of tried to do something a bit different than just the standard stuff we'd seen in season 4 with her. So I really liked that. And yeah, she just brings a lot of lightheartedness and fun to the show that I really, really enjoyed. So Harmony was great fun. Love her. Hopefully we'll see a lot more of her in Buffy and in Angel, because she had a really good episode in Angel as well. Speaking of Angel, let's talk about Angel. Can't say too much really. We saw a bit of him in flashbacks, obviously in Fall for Love. So I think that was during the time as revealed in the Darla episode of Angel. I think that he had his soul back at that point, so he kind of was Angel. But he's like getting a second chance, I think, when we saw him in those flashbacks. At least some of them. I think it was Angelus in other ones we saw. And obviously we got a lot more screen time for him in Fall for Love than we did for Angel in Forever. But it was cool to seeing Angelus in Buffy again. That's kind of a nice thrill to see those flashbacks and fill in history with like Spike, Drusilla, etc. So that was cool, that little reminder of the season 2 days with Angelus. But then Angel in Forever was a really nice treat. I shouldn't really say nice treat, because, you know, Joyce was dead and it was her funeral. So it wasn't really a nice occasion, but it was really cool to see Angel be there for Buffy and actually turn up at the funeral. Obviously wait until dark. That was a really nice moment. I really liked the speech, you know, that he gave her, and then the conversation that they were having about carrying on and moving forward and stuff like that. It was nice to kind of see those two reconnect after all their history and all they've been through. I think that was like the only moment really we saw Angel this season, because they really are kind of, you know, Buffy and Angel are very much on separate kind of paths now, I think. So I'm not sure we'll ever really see many crossovers particularly again, and I don't actually mind, which kind of surprises me because I'm a sucker for a good crossover. But yeah, Angel being there for Buffy at the funeral, really, really nice. I love that they did that and they could arrange that so David could be in the episode and stuff like that. It's really cool to see him. So you always get a buzz out of seeing like a past character come back, I think. I would absolutely love Cordelia to come back one day in Buffy, even if it's just for like one episode, because I really like her on Angel. So I love his like guest star in a way that Angel does. But nonetheless, Angel's appearance was a really nice moment in Forever, and it makes sense, you know. And that's something about the Buffyverse. When they can get people back and bring characters back, they will do it because it makes sense. I don't think Buffy and Angel will ever truly be done. So it is nice that it keeps popping up every now and again, even if it is just in flashbacks. But I do really, really love the thought that he put into coming to support Buffy. That was really great. Especially because, you know, it wasn't like him and Joyce were like best friends as well. So that was really cool. And yeah, speaking of Joyce. Oh, heck. Where do I even begin? I know some people don't like her, and she wasn't exactly Parent of the Year all the time, I understand that. But I do think she tried her best at times, and she made mistakes, but that's the most human thing, I think. You know, she is a human. She was kind of the most normal character in there, really. And I think humans make mistakes. And I think more than any other season, Joyce proved she's just a human in this season, because she passed away. She got ill. She passed away. You know, it wasn't like a vampire murdered her or a demon killed her or anything like that. It was just life, and it was just, you know, a tragedy, and that happens. And to die is the most human thing of all, really. And Joyce is just a human. And therefore she would make mistakes, and she would not always be the greatest mum she might have you know, she might have been. But I think she was quite suddenly left a single mother. She didn't really know how to do that. She had to like navigate the waters from fairly early on. And yeah, I'm really, really sad that she's no longer around, because I really loved her relationship with Buffy at times, and her relationship with Spike was really funny, and Giles and Dawn obviously had a lot of sweet moments. And I just felt bad for so many of the characters, because, you know, I think Joyce was kind of, I think she was more than just a mum to Buffy and Dawn. I think she was a mum to Xander and Willow as well. And she was like an adult that Giles could talk to if he needed to, or more than talk to on a couple of occasions on a cop car. And yeah, episodes like The Body just showcased how many lives Joyce touched, because, you know, Anya was so upset as well, and Tara was upset. Just the impact I think Joyce had, even in death, I think she'd be very proud of her girls. And, you know, I think right now, Buffy's with her mum again right now, and I think that's quite lovely. I don't think that's going to last forever, which is kind of sad to think that if Buffy comes back, she might be torn away from Joyce all over again. I don't think that would be easy. But I'd like to think they're together somewhere watching Dawn. You know, they did their jobs in the end, and I think Joyce did try her best. She had like some poor moments of decisions, like at the end of season 2. She definitely handled that in the wrong way, but I can forgive her for that because she's human, and this season proved that. Yeah, I just think she tried her best to be a really good mum. That's all I'd ever want my mum to be. And yeah, just her whole death was just so sudden and shocking and devastating. And even when she first got ill and had the brain tumour stuff early on in the season, I was really, you know, invested in that story, and I found it just so sad, because she just seemed like this sweet woman trying her best to live her life and go on dates with a guy called Brian and get flowers, and it seemed like she might finally find a guy who wasn't a robot or an asshole like Buffy and Dawn's dad, and life was like, no thanks. And yeah, it's a tragedy, and Buffy did explore that in a very interesting way this season, and Joyce was kind of the catalyst for that. But I do think she tried her best, and she loved her girls. I don't think you could ask for much more. You know, she quite literally loved them to death. So I'm still very, very sad about Joyce's passing. And as powerful it is, you know, it's still a tragedy, and it's still really, really sad. And yeah, I really, really liked Joyce a lot. I loved her. I thought she was actually quite wholesome at times. And yeah, I will miss seeing her around. It was very, very sad. Then we also had the Watchers Council came back for an episode with Checkpoint, and obviously led by Travers, an arsehole. It was cool kind of seeing them again though, because, you know, we don't get a lot of chances to kind of explore that side of things now that Buffy's like not part of, like, doesn't take orders from the council. But they continue to just be their same old arsehole selves, really. They haven't really learnt a lot. I don't know if they ever will. I'll have to wait and see if we get any more development from them. I would like to get like an episode where the Watchers Council like really change their ways. That would be something I would do for like the end of the show. I would have like the Watchers Council be like shut down and rebooted, and like Giles could lead like a new Watchers Council or something. Get Wesley on board, why not? Because obviously they're all a bunch of dicks, and they need to sort their lives out, sort out their priorities. But yeah, at the end of the day, they just want the power. They want to feel in charge, and they want to feel powerful. And, you know, Glory kind of wanted the same thing. So shows how bad they are, really. But they do provide a very interesting kind of obstacle for Buffy and Giles, I guess, and it's a way of showcasing just how great Buffy and Giles are together, and, you know, how far they've come since Buffy became the Slayer in the first place and came to Sunnydale and everything. So yeah, while they're not like the most interesting characters ever, and I do despise them because they're annoying and up themselves, what they do bring to the show when they do pop up, I think, is very interesting for the characters, so I can't really knock it for that. Drusilla, I love that we saw her again, both in flashbacks and in present day, because we hadn't seen her in present day for so long in Buffy. It was such a thrill to see her again. Juliet Landau was just so good in the role. Just the physicality and everything she brings, the voice. just such a chilling performance every single time. I liked that they brought her back for the episode where Buffy found out Spike had feelings for her and stuff like that. I thought that was a very interesting dilemma they presented Spike with, and she still had like those really funny, wacky moments that Drusilla has. So it was great to see her pop up again. Hopefully it's not the last time, although I don't know what else they could really do right now. So they've done the whole like potentially getting back with Spike thing, and I think that's drawn a line under that. I think maybe there's more potential for her on Angel now than in Buffy, but it was such a thrill to see her again, because it just reminded me of like the season 2 days when the channel really started kicking off when I got to like season 2 of Buffy, and I used to have a lot of soft spots for season 2 because that's when I really started to properly fall hard for the show. So it was great to see her again, if not for nostalgia more than anything else, and the fact that Juliet Landau's always just so brilliant. Then Olaf, the troll, I thought I'd just mention him because I found him a very interesting kind of threat in terms of maybe not so much as a physical threat, even though he was a physical threat. I think he brought a unique kind of look to the villains this season. I think another thing, this season was kind of, I think life itself was like the main villain of this season, aside from Glory. So we had a lot of villains who were kind of like more humanoid in appearance. And I think it was kind of interesting that we just had a troll pop up at times, just to be like a traditional kind of villain. You just beat him up. But they gave him like a history with Anya, which I thought was a very interesting thing. And it gave him a bit more fleshing out there. And he was just a nice kind of one-off kind of threat for them to face. And a few like funny moments with that. And again, he had ties to other characters. I always like it when villains have ties to characters we already know and love, and they kind of did that with Olaf. So they're kind of learning from how like well the Angelus arc worked in season 2. So yeah, he was an interesting threat, and I think it did break up the kind of thing this season when we had a lot of kind of more humanoid villains, particularly near the end of the season. Obviously we had that weird giant snake thing, but that looked odd. So yeah, Olaf was an interesting kind of threat for a one-off. Seeing the first Slayer again was cool. I did like about this season that we learned a bit more about some past Slayers, and we saw some past Slayers. And we saw the first Slayer again. It was funny how Willow responded to her as well, like recognising her, and the whole death is your gift prophecy. It was cool to see them pop up, like a little reminder of Restless. Just kind of full circle with some of the foreshadowing in that, really. With their first appearance. So it was cool to see them pop up again. And then we had Warren, who builds sex robots. That was kind of interesting. The idea of him like trying to manufacture like a true love, and then he ended up finding it in a real person. And the love that he thought he wanted, that he made, wasn't exactly what he thought it was going to be, because that's not how life works. You can't just make a perfect girlfriend. You can't just make life perfect for yourself. That's not how it is. And even if you think you can, it ends up not being what you wanted after all. So from that aspect of it, I think it was a very interesting kind of thing that they spoke about how life really works with Warren as a character, even if he himself wasn't particularly that interesting. What he kind of stood for, I think, did provide an interesting kind of aspect to the season, and it kind of ties into one of the themes that I want to talk about as well. So yeah, Warren was there, and like helping Spike build the Buffy bot and everything, so he was kind of a catalyst more than anything, more than a character. But what he stood for and what he kind of added to like the themes of the season and stuff, I actually thought warranted his appearance. Then we also had Doc, the creepy bastard. I thought the actor did a really great job with him, actually. He was very creepy. The effect of like his tail and his tongue, gross. And I thought his initial appearance in Forever was going to be a one-off, but then they kind of brought him back and revealed that he had this, he served Glory, he worshipped Glory. That was kind of a cool little secondary antagonist to have. And yeah, he was just effectively creepy, and he kind of did what he needed to do. And I very much enjoyed his death, where Buffy just went, yeet, and you just hear him scream. Iconic. So yeah, Doc was a formidable foe, an interesting foe. But I really did like the actor, so I kind of just wanted to shout, give him a shout out really more than anything. Then we saw Graham again from the Initiative in season 4. He popped up for a couple of episodes, I think, to kind of really help with Riley's little arc and his exit in the end. And Graham was like the likeable one of the Initiative lot last season, outside of Riley, obviously. So it was cool that of everyone they could bring back, it was going to be him. They couldn't bring Forrest back because he's dead. Or I wouldn't have minded if they revived him again, if they could kill him a third time. That I would have been happy for them to bring him back to do that. But yeah, seeing Graham again, just a nice tie to season 4. It's not like they completely forget the events of season 4, the Initiative, or those characters. They still will bring back characters if the plot requires them. They're not afraid of doing that, even if season 4 wasn't like fans' favourites or whatever. I don't know how it was received at the time. They're not afraid of their history. Buffy isn't afraid of its history, and I really, really like that a lot. So yeah, seeing Graham again was interesting. Dracula. I always forget we started the season off with Dracula. Madness, absolute madness. But I think in the context of the episode, it worked. If someone had told me beforehand, oh yeah, there's an episode where she fights Dracula, I'd have been like, that's fucking stupid. But they did kind of make a joke out of it at times. Like Spike was talking about him. They had like a history and stuff like that. Again, tying a villain to a character we already know and love. And yeah, just the kind of... He was a very unique sort of vampire. I think that's why it worked. He wasn't just like a standard run-of-the-mill vampire. He just happened to be called Dracula. He had this hold over Buffy. He had this hold over Xander, and that was very, very funny. He's one of the few vampires who've actually like drunk from Buffy. I think Angel and the Master are like the only other two, I think. So that was kind of an interesting thing, and the threat he posed was very unique. And I very much like how they started off the season with him, and I'll talk about why a bit later on when it comes to some of the themes. And yeah, I think it's a very interesting way to kick off the season with like the most famous vampire ever. I never expected to like them have like a famous vampire be in Buffy, but I think the way they handled it I thought was very cool. The actors did a good job. So yeah, I actually quite enjoyed what Dracula brought. I wouldn't want him to like come back. I feel like the one-off worked effectively. But still, it's crazy to think that Dracula's been in Buffy, but I think it did work quite well, all things considered. And the inclusion of the monks this season, obviously they really kick-started off the main plot by turning the key into human form, and they gave us a bit of exposition. There's kind of some blurred lines with them because they kind of just infiltrated Buffy's life and her family and friends' memories without their permission, which is kind of dodgy. But the fact that they really trusted Buffy with the key, like literally their whole life, really, they put in Buffy's hands, even though they all died. That's kind of nice in a way, that faith they have in Buffy. But yeah, the idea of like these monks and the fact that they've kind of dressed similarly to Glory's minions, I thought was quite interesting. So yeah, they didn't bring a lot to the season, obviously, because they were just there to explain how Dawn came about. But it's still an interesting idea that I liked them doing. And then we have the robots, April and the Buffy bot. I've already said this before in like the reactions, like the Buffy bot and stuff. And if someone had told me before there's going to be a Buffy robot, I said that's farcical. But again, in context, it really, really worked. They made some jokes out of it that I thought were very, very funny. While it is still creepy, how it ended up coming back again, you think it might be a one-off thing, but it came back in a big way. And it caused some confusion with the Scoobies and stuff in Intervention. And it provided some interesting parallels to like Buffy herself and spoke about, the differences between the two of them. And then it came back in the finale as like a distraction for Glory. I thought that was very, very cool. I liked how that all came about. And then, yeah, April herself actually seemed like quite sweet. And I liked that they could connect her and Buffy together in some way, in the fact that they've both lost loves and April couldn't understand why Rowan didn't love her anymore. And what she kind of stood for about, manufacturing love versus like actual real love and genuine affection and feelings, and the fact that this robot did have feelings when it's like traditional when, someone's kind of emotionless, you might call them a robot. I kind of like how they switched that up with April. I thought bringing robots into the season, I know we've had robots before with like Ted and I, Robot You, Jane and all of that, but this is how Buffy season 5 deals with robots, as opposed to like the earlier seasons where it may have been a bit this is, as much as I love I, Robot You, Jane and everything, the way they used the robots with like the Buffy bot and April is far more interesting, and you know, it has multiple purposes and like feeds into like themes and stuff like that, whereas it may not have quite done so in like a filler episode in season 1, you know. So they ended up being actually really cool additions to the season that I would never have expected. So yeah, I really liked the inclusion of April in the Buffy bot, which is kind of madness. When the idea was first presented, I would have laughed in your face. But yeah, they really, really worked, and I really liked their inclusion in the season, how they kind of played into the finale, and how they played into like the themes of the season. That I will be talking about now, because I think that's the last character I wanted to talk about. Obviously I haven't talked about every single character, like Joyce's doctor or whatever, but I don't feel like we need to talk about every single one, so I won't. Whew, okay, deep breath guys, deep breath. We're halfway there. 3 more sections left. Right, if you need the toilet, pause it, you can go, it's fine. I'll wait for you. Oh, I won't, because you're going to be pausing this, but you know. Anyway, let's talk about some themes of the season. Obviously, I've watched this for the first time. I would almost certainly have missed so much stuff. This is just what I've picked up on, having rewatched a few clips, having made my initial notes on when I was watching the episodes for the first time, and just things I kind of noticed or want to talk about, or this is my interpretation. And obviously, I may be talking absolute shit at times. I may have missed things that like Joss Whedon intended or whatever that I've clearly missed because I'm a fool. I don't know, but this is what I got. So yeah, the first one is the idea of family, and not just that, found family and losing family, family found and family lost. So I think some big examples of that, obviously the main ones would be the whole Buffy, Joyce and Dawn kind of cycle. They were like a family unit. Obviously they lost Joyce, and then Dawn also lost Buffy. Buffy and Joyce found some family in Dawn coming into their lives. Then we also have Tara, and literally there was an episode this season called Family. And you know, her family were coming as well, and I don't think she really considers them family now, because she found a new one in Willow and all her friends. So that was another kind of interesting idea of like, family doesn't necessarily mean blood. Sometimes it does. Sometimes that is the key to saving the day at the end of the season. But that's not all family is, and I like how they kind of explored that, with both Dawn being inserted into the Summers family and Tara being inserted into the Scooby family. So that's all cool. Kind of a bit as well, we saw William find a family in Drusilla and Angelus and Darla when he became Spike. That's kind of a found family as well. Xander and Anya, they kind of found a family in each other through getting married, because they're going to become a family when/if they get hitched. Another big one is obviously Glory and Ben. They refer to each other as like brother and sister. There's kind of a twisted kind of family dynamic there. They explored so many different like family bonds and dynamics in this season. It was kind of crazy, really. And then also Riley and the Initiative, and he kind of found a family with them. And in the end, he kind of ended up being drawn back into that life because he wasn't quite fitting in with Buffy and the Scoobies. You know, he wasn't in a way that Tara found her place in that family. I don't think Riley ever quite did. So that's kind of another idea of family lost or family gained, if you talk about him like rejoining the Initiative, or those Initiative people. It's not quite the Initiative anymore. So yeah, that's kind of a big running theme, I think, of this season, particularly when there's an episode called Family. And yeah, the main arc of this season, you know, came from Dawn and being the key, and the fact that Buffy ended up dying to save this little sister that she never actually had for most of her life. Because while she gained a sister in that sense, it also hasn't always been her sister. So she's kind of found and lost a family in some ways. Because she now has these memories of Dawn. So the memories, she might have had some really good memories of spending time with her mum and dad. She might have some really good memories. They're lost because now Dawn's in some of them, you know? So that's kind of an interesting kind of thing. Then another one, I think this is a big theme in most seasons, but death, and more so mortality, I think is kind of how I'm going to phrase it this season. Big examples, obviously Buffy and Joyce's death, and the mortality that comes from being human. More so in obviously Joyce's case, because she died of like more natural causes. Then we saw the deaths of 2 previous Slayers, so we saw like 3 Slayers die this season, which is quite a lot, I think, considering what we've seen in the past. So yeah, that kind of feeds into that theme as well. There's a very popular expression, you know, death or glory, which I thought was kind of interesting, considering how this season played out. You know, it's when you're willing to kind of put everything on the line and maybe do something crazy. Death or glory, and I think that's kind of an interesting phrase, considering who our big bad was, and how Buffy's journey this season ends. It really was death or glory was going to win, even if she was gone. You know, her plan still would have been successful, and her name would probably have lived on. So I think that actual phrase kind of speaks to a lot of what the season's actually about in like 3 words. So I quite like that. Then also in kinds of terms of mortality, it's just like, I've spoken about this in reactions, like the limitations of the human form. You know, and you're not understanding why Joyce just can't get back in her body, you know, it's just a shell and a corpse now. The fact that Buffy just isn't strong enough to fight a god. Ben and Glory having to share this form, and therefore that limits how powerful Glory can be, and in the end they start kind of bleeding into each other, and that caused a lot of confusion for both of them. Then we obviously have the key being limited to human form, and like all this concentrated power. And, you know, the true potential of the key couldn't just be used straight away, because Dawn had to bleed instead of just like harnessing the energy of the key. So being in human form kind of limits, I guess, how easy the key could have been used. Then also Xander and Buffy having like these 2 halves in the replacement. You know, we had this version of Xander who's like super confident and was doing really well in his life, but because there aren't 2 Xanders, there are just one, and the Xander who like lacked all that confidence and was very, very insecure and stuff like that, very awkward. Because both those Xanders are actually just one person in one body, Xander can never truly be like that, truly confident and you know, live life to the fullest self, which is kind of sad, but that's the limitations of being human. And the idea that the demon in that episode was actually trying to split Buffy in 2, to have like Slayer concentrate and then just normal Buffy. So the demon kind of saw Buffy as like a limit, and limited by being a human, as well as the Slayer. So that's kind of an interesting thing as well. Then another theme was different versions of yourself. So I think it's a very good quote from Matt Smith's last Doctor Who, to bring in a different show. But it's another show I love, so I will allow it. It's my review. In one of his final speeches, he says something along the lines of, we're all different people through our lives, and you've got to keep moving forward so long as you remember all the people you used to be. And I think this season has a lot of that kind of ideals, because they examine all these different versions of the characters we know. Giles and Ripper, the 2 sides of him, are kind of still being explored. We have Buffy and the idea of Buffy concentrate from the replacement, and the Buffy bot, you know. Some people weren't fooled by the Buffy bot, some people were. This is like a version of Buffy that could love Spike, whereas the other Buffy would say, the only chance you had with me was when I was unconscious, for example. So we had like many different versions of Buffy, And another different version of Buffy would obviously be Dawn, because as Buffy said, you know, she's made from me, she's part of me. We have Spike and William, two different sides of the same character, different versions of the same character that we saw this season. Ben and Glory, the same body, but two different people, two very different people, and then it kind of started to almost merge near the end. And that's one of the only examples of that really happening, of all these examples this season, which is kind of interesting. You know, the Key, and then there's Dawn. You know, they're the same thing, but two very different versions of that same thing. And it's not like it's like the same person, it's like this object or this power source that became a person. So that's a very different version of yourself. Then we had Joyce, we had Joyce's body, and we had the idea of what Joyce could have been when she was reanimated in Forever, and what that could have looked like. And as Doc said, you know, it's going to be mostly your mother, or probably it's going to be your mother, maybe a bit different. So the different versions of yourself there. The two different Xanders and the replacement is another big example of that. We have the Tara we know and love, and then Tara after Glory kind of, you know, sucked all the brain energy out. And, you know, all of Glory's victims of that, actually, all like the, you know, the patients at the hospitals, who they used to be, they'd have been very different. Like, was it like the security guard or something we first saw in No Place Like Home, and then what he ended up kind of happening to him when Glory went. So again, very different versions of people. Yeah, Buffy and Dawn, as I already talked about. Buffy kind of saw herself very differently at the start of the season, because she was afraid she was just becoming like this predator who was hunting vampires as opposed to just slaying them. It's another different side to Buffy. Tara and what she thought was the demon side inside of her. So we had who Tara actually was, and then we had this demon Tara that her family were trying to paint her as being to control her. We have Willow, and Willow when she goes all crazy with her magic and gets black eyes and is pretty badass, to be honest. Again, a very different version, because obviously there's Willow, who Tara loves, and there's Willow, who scares Tara, I think. Then also we have Riley at the start of the season, where he's still kind of feeling the effects of the initiative, you know, his heart rate's all over the place, stuff like that. Then we have Riley, who's just human and very insecure that he's not good enough for Buffy now. He's like not special, or as he sees it. So very different versions all over again. So yeah, that's another kind of theme I picked up on. Then the idea of what it means to be human, what it means to be like alive. Another big example, obviously it's going to come up a lot because it's the main arc, but Dawn and the Key, she thought she knew what it meant to be human because she thought she'd lived 14 years already, but she kind of really had to relearn these things, like repeating the affection that Buffy showed her at the end of No Place Like Home with when she saw Joyce's body, accepting her death at the Key, at the end of The Gift, before Buffy ended up sacrificing herself instead. You know, it's a very human thing to accept your mortality. Spike, seeing how he used to be as a human, what he is now, and the fact that he sees himself, it's another different version of himself actually, is the monster and the man. Like he said to Buffy, you know, I know I'm a monster, but you treat me like a man. That's kind of what he holds on to. That's the kind of part of his humanity I think he holds on to, why he kind of has those feelings for Buffy, I think, or a strong part of it. She treats him like he's a human. And he likes remembering what that was, I think. Because he knows he's a monster. Clearly he hates himself. So he wants to try and feel human again however he can, and Buffy treats him like that. Anya, very much so. She is still learning exactly what it means to be human, and she has moments where it's very sweet and she's getting there, and other moments where it's not. And obviously it's going to take a lot of time for her to truly feel like a human again, I suppose. And that's still going to be a process for her that might take the rest of her life, you know, until like old age or whatever. So that's another example of that. And yeah, the idea that life itself was kind of the villain of this season, along with Glory, that and accepting that, and accepting death, and the fact that you may not know how to live in this world, and you can die. Very human things to kind of deal with, you know, thinking, oh, I can't carry on like this, or accepting your mortality, like losing Joyce, and what Buffy did at the end. The hardest thing in this world is to live in it. That's a very human sentiment and a very human realisation. Because, you know, a vampire could live forever, and, you know, immortals will live forever. And they can't accept that they could die, because they might not. Ben and his kind of connection to Glory. You know, like banging on the locker, going, I'm Ben, I'm Ben, I'm Ben. He's trying to hold on to that human part of him. He's trying to remind himself that he is a human being. His name is Ben. You know, it's one of the first things you learn about another human when you meet them for the first time. You learn their name. He was trying to desperately hold on to that. Again, Tara and the demon side. She wanted to hide the demon side she thought she had, so she like mucks up the spell at the end of last season, or near the end of last season. And she learns, you know, that part of her doesn't actually exist by the end of Family. So that's kind of encapsulated what it means to be human, and just accepting, I think, what it is to be human as well as a big theme. Then another one is like things you can't fight, or things you can't understand, things you can't win against, things you just have to accept and let it be. You know, a big example is Glory being a god. You know, at first they didn't understand exactly what Glory was until obviously the Watchers Council told them. Buffy couldn't beat her in like a physical fight. She just couldn't win. Joyce's death was just natural causes and a tragedy, and that's life. Life is kind of a villain in that sense, and that's when, you know, you can slay any demon or vampire you like. One day your mum's going to die. One day your dad's going to die. You know, one day you're going to bury someone you love. One day people you love are going to bury you. And you can't fight that. And so, maybe you don't understand it. You know, I'm sure there are some people who really struggle to come to terms with mortality and come to terms with deaths. You know, I've had losses in the family. I'm still not over myself. I think the prospect of death is kind of terrifying, but you kind of have to accept that, I think. And some people may not accept that until the last day of their life. Some people might never accept that, but I think that's kind of an interesting thing that this season played with, in terms of Joyce's death, and Joyce's illness as well. You can't necessarily understand why Joyce had to be ill of all people. Why is my mum the one who's ill? And sometimes you can't fight the consequences of that. You know, people do die of brain tumours, and I think Joyce's death was kind of like a complication of surgery and stuff like that. It just came on suddenly. Sometimes there are just some enemies you can't fight. There are some fights you can't win, because that's life. And the idea of death is your gift. Buffy didn't understand what that meant for so long. And when she did realise it, she realised she couldn't fight it, because if she didn't die, her little sister would have to, or, you know, it would be like the end of the world, the end of the universe even. So that was kind of another thing. And what I really, really like about all of these things, and this idea of things you don't understand or things you can't fight, you know, things you really aren't sure of in your life, or in Buffy's life, things more specifically. You know, there's a lot of things in this season that Buffy herself couldn't fight and win against. That's kind of the point. And then we start the season with Buffy versus Dracula, like the most famous vampire ever, and everyone knows about Dracula. Everyone knows like the classic weaknesses of the vampires. So the fact that we start a season all about things you may not know about or don't understand or can't win against, they kicked off the season with like the vampire everyone knows about, I thought was really, really cool and a kind of nice bookend and like contrast from the start of the season to the end. Then another one is the idea of like giving in to your impulses. I think some examples of that are Spike and the Buffy bot. He gave in to that impulse to have Buffy like love him and show affection to someone, even if it's just a robot who looks like Buffy. Then Glory being a bit mad at times and very impulsively like sucking the brains out of people. Riley allowing vampires to like feed on him and stuff to kind of get a kick out of that, and giving into that. And I think the main one is obviously Willow and her growing desire to always lean on magic at basically every turn. You know, oh Willow, I can't reach this thing at the top of the shelf. Can you get it for me? Magic. I think she probably would if she knew the spell. I mean, she could throw a pencil. I'm sure she could get something down from the top of the cupboard. But yeah, I think Willow's probably the most guilty of that at times, giving in to her impulses and giving in to the lust I think she has for magic. I think there's an attraction to it that she can't quite quench that thirst, like a vampire. Vampires is another thing that has to give in to impulses, otherwise they will die. And the final theme I want to talk about was the idea of love and love stories. I think a big one is mainly from I Was Made to Love You, with the idea of like manufactured love, which obviously comes from Warren building April and then Spike getting Warren to build the Buffy bot for him. So it's kind of artificial love. That's kind of one way that's been shown this season. One aspect of love, if you want to call it love, if it's like artificial and made up and stuff like that. So it may not be exactly what they wanted, but to them it could be love, and certainly to like April it was love. So I suppose you can't really ignore that side of things. And while Spike really does feel love for Buffy, he put that love into the Buffy bot instead. Quite literally, actually. Yeah. But yeah, that's one aspect of it. There's also, I guess, the love story of Buffy and Riley, the non-love story. I mean, it was a love story for Riley because he was in love with Buffy. He got his heart broken because she didn't feel the same way. And that was kind of interesting in itself. The fact that that doesn't work out, because I don't think that's like the only like love story this season for Buffy. I think she also had a love story with her family, with Joyce and with Dawn. As she said, she loved Joyce more than anyone and anything, and she lost her, so that's still kind of a tragic love story. She's lost two of the loves. But I do feel like a complete love story we got for Buffy in this season was the love story between her and her little sister. Because I think sibling love is exceptionally strong and unbreakable, I think, to many. And I think as soon as Buffy kind of found out that Dawn wasn't actually her sister, found out the truth and everything, I think that was a matter of her falling in love with Dawn all over again. Like, she remembered when, there's memories we saw in Spiral when Joyce and the dickhead dad bring Dawn home, and Buffy seems unsure at first. As soon as she holds Dawn, you see her fall in love with her little sister. And be like, oh, I could be the one to take care of her sometimes, and obviously that ended up really being the case. And yeah, once Buffy found out the truth of all that, I think it was a case of her falling in love with the idea of having a little sister, for real this time, because she has the context. And yeah, she just, right from that moment, and Joyce said, I know she's not mine, but we have to take care of her, we have to love her, we love her. So the love story between the Summers family, I think, was a big aspect of this season, and one I think was actually really beautifully and bittersweet in its execution. So yeah, I think the first half of the season was kind of Buffy's love story with Riley falling apart and not being what she would have wanted it to be when it first got started, trying to get over Angel and everything. The second half of the season more so was about the love story between her and her little sister. And it was that act of love that enabled Buffy to sacrifice herself at the end, and save her little sister. So I actually think that's a big aspect of love this season. She wasn't a fool for love like Spike was. It was just her sacrifice was very much an act of love because it was to save her little sister. So the kind of love story between two sisters and between the Summers family was like a big aspect of this season, and I felt that kind of fed into a general theme of love, because obviously lots of characters do have love for each other. There's the kind of father and daughter love I think that Giles and Buffy have, for example, we have the love between Xander and Anya, which was very much shown in Into the Woods, where Xander gives that really nice speech to her about, how much he loves her, and this is real for him. And then Willow and Tara, very much in love as well, and that's another love story. And it's also the idea that people you think should love you maybe necessarily don't, like Tara's family, were very manipulative, and they weren't really acting out of love. So it's kind of an anti-love story in there as well. And the idea of Buffy never being able to love Spike, and Spike knows that. So that was another kind of theme that I thought was kind of key to this season. I'm pretty sure I've already made like a key pun like that, but this is my third recording session for this review, so I've forgotten, because I started recording this 25 years ago. No, I mean, when I started recording this review, it was light outside, it is now dark, so buckle up, kiddos. If you're still at this point, congratulations. You can go to bed at any time, it's okay. So yeah, I think that was kind of the key themes that I picked up on in season 5. Obviously, I almost certainly missed a lot. Those are the ones that really stuck out to me, or the ones I really cared and wanted to talk about more. And if you have your own ideas for like themes, please do let me know. So yeah, that's the other section. Now we move on to section 5, which is the favourite episodes bit. The bit I'm always excited to get to, because I think it's always very, very interesting to see how things compare. And for me, this is a very interesting experience, because I very, very easily came up with my top 5, which I don't think has ever been the case. I've normally really, really struggled to like narrow it down and to work out an order. For me, season 5, I don't know why, I think it's very interesting, but I had no problem at all. I narrowed it, well, when I first this could be in my top 5, so could this, I ended up with 6. And to me it was still quite clear, and when I rewatched my afterthoughts of some of my reactions, I could kind of work out just how into the episodes I was. So I actually got my top 5 very, very easily. And a lot of the comments on the posts, and thank you to everyone who did vote on that post in my community tab. There's still time to do it for Angel. So yeah, a lot of the comments on that were saying, oh god, this is so difficult, stuff like that. And I didn't find it difficult at all, which is kind of interesting, and I normally do find it quite difficult. But I don't think that's a reflection of the season, because obviously this is my favourite season of the show so far, and there wasn't really an episode I would say that was bad this season. There were some weaker ones for me, but I don't think there was an episode that was like, oh, that's interesting, like I normally do. So I don't know why I just found it so easy. I think it's just the problem, if there's a problem with season 5, is that some of the episodes are just too good. And I also think that's kind of influenced the poll, because if you see the amount of votes some of these episodes got, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by the top 3, that's for sure, if you've seen any selection of the comments on the Buffy post. But I think it's kind of the fact that some episodes were just too good. It meant that even like really good and fun episodes in the season may have not got that many votes at all. It's like even like the bottom couple are actually quite surprising to me. But I have like a lot of the first half of the season is on the lower end, which I think is kind of interesting. Is that the case for my top? Well, it's a top 5, so it can't exactly be even. I have 3 of my top 5 in the second half of the season, and then 2 are in the first half. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting, how that kind of worked out. But yeah, I think if there is an issue with season 5, it's just that there are a select few episodes that are just too good, because everyone voted for them and none of the other ones, so it seems like all the other ones kind of pale in comparison. But yeah, we're going to start with you guys and what you all voted for, with like some episodes got like the same amount of votes and stuff. I've just kind of made it all out like that, so it's like ended up being sorted into like 13 different tiers. So yeah, I do think this is probably the season with the most singular episodes getting like their own kind of spot. There aren't as many episodes grouped together like there have been in previous seasons. Like it's like 5 episodes that didn't get any votes. You know, there are a couple, but really not that many. So it was very, very close between a lot of episodes, which I think does speak to the quality of a lot of the episodes this season. Until you get to the gap between 3rd place and 4th place, because it's huge, and it just gets bigger and bigger. It's quite funny. So some episodes clearly are quite fan favourites based on the results of all these votes. But yeah, you guys, to help compare with mine, in 13th place, so well, joint 13th really, joint bottom, is Out of My Mind, Crush, and I Was Made to Love You, which is very surprising to me, but they didn't get any votes. But I think, again, that's just the quality of season 5. There were just so many good episodes, even like episodes I really enjoyed, like Out of My Mind and Crush, and I Was Made to Love You, don't get any votes at all. So that was that. 12th, joint 12th even, it's Real Me, The Replacement, Shadow, Listening to Fear, Into the Woods, and Triangle, which all got 1 vote. So a big chunk of the first half of the season there, which is kind of interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. So that's 6 episodes. And yeah, 13th and 12th, all those episodes grouped together, is like 7 episodes out of the front 11 of the season, which is quite telling, I guess, of how things really amped up in the second half. Then joint 11th is Forever and the Weight of the World, which got 3 votes. Joint 10th was Buffy vs. Dracula and Spiral, which got 4 votes. And then it just became very, very close between individual episodes. So 9th was Blood Ties with 5 votes. 8th was No Place Like Home with 8 votes. 7th was Tough Love with 10. 6th was Checkpoint with 18. 5th was Intervention with 19. 4th was Family with 23. Family did very, very well. I don't know why I was surprised, because Family's a really good episode, but I was surprised at just how well it placed, actually. Then top 3 probably won't surprise many people. And I actually... I have the same top 3, but in a different order. But yeah, 3rd place for you guys was Fall for Love. So the last 4th place got 23 votes. Fall for Love got 70. So I think that's quite a fan favourite episode. 2nd place is The Body, which got 90 votes. So another big jump and a lot of votes. And then 1st place, probably surprising no one, was The Gift, the season finale, which got 108 votes. So that's kind of crazy. There were literally only like 1 or 2 comments out of that whole lot that didn't vote for The Gift at all. So I think that's quite a popular episode. So there we have it. That is the order from which you guys voted. So yeah, thank you to everyone who voted in that. And then we move on to my top 5. So like I said, I did have 6 when I first kind of narrowed it down. Like, oh yeah, I really liked that one, like that one. And just missing out, my honourable mention is going to be Family. Because that was a really, really great episode. I like that it's very Tara-centric. We've got a lot of answers surrounding some mysteries with her being welcomed in to the family over the Scoobies was very, very wholesome, and I really, really liked that episode a lot. But it just missed out. And I think that's just because some episodes may have had like really funny lines, for example, or may have been more like about the main arc of the season. That's kind of the only real distinctions I can make between a lot of episodes this season. It's very, very close. Like even my 2nd and 3rd place, you could easily swap them, and I'd still be happy with how the list goes. But it really is like minute little things and just my gut feelings that I went for. So, my top 5. In 5th place was No Place Like Home, which actually reminds me, I love that Buffy had an episode called No Place Like Home this season. In Angel Season 2, their finale was like, There's No Place Like Blurt's Globe, or whatever that's called. So kind of the link between that. It's not really a link, but it's kind of funny that they have like similar titles, and like it's the same kind of reference. So that was cool. But yeah, No Place Like Home I really loved because we got the answers I've been craving for about Dawn. It was our first proper introduction to Glory and seeing how batshit crazy she was. And yeah, some more hints about like Joyce's health as well, taking a turn for the worse, and that allowed for some bonding between Buffy and Dawn. And as we learn about the answers that Buffy was getting at the same time as her, you could really feel her plight. And just a very like Summers Women driven episode, and I really, really liked the focus on that. And obviously it kick-started the whole like theme of Buffy's love story with her little sister as well this season that I really, really loved. And it was a big episode for Buffy's arc, which again was like my favourite aspect of season 5. So No Place Like Home was so much fun, and it's always very, very satisfying when you get the answers, and it makes a lot of sense. And the reveal scene where like Buffy casts the spell and you see Dawn fading in and out, so well done. I really like that episode a hell of a lot. So yeah, that's number 5. Number 4 is Checkpoint, actually, which was 6th for you guys. And No Place Like Home for you guys was 8th. So not too far off. But yeah, I really love this episode, and I will be forever annoyed that for whatever reason, I still don't know to this day what went wrong. The audio on that reaction is just mucked up and all echoey and bad, and I hate it, and it's so annoying. Never happened to me before, never happened to me since. I don't know what went wrong, but yeah, the audio on that reaction is pretty terrible, which sucks because it's one of my favourites of the season. So annoying. But yeah, I liked seeing the return of the Watchers Council, seeing them test Buffy and Giles and their kind of bond, and the interviews with all the other Scoobies were very, very funny. Particularly Willow and Tara's interview I thought was quite amusing. And also Spike's was quite good as well. Almost trying to dub her in it, but also not, and trying to make sure she was doing okay or whatever. Very, very well done. And that's even including the Knights of Byzantium, which I'm like, But again, that was when they were first in it, so I was still kind of intrigued by where they would go with them, and I didn't realise it was going to end up being a bit but it did also provide that kick-ass scene at the end of the episode that Buffy's like, listen, you little shits, I'm not taking this anymore, you're going to tell me what's in that file right now. And obviously we get the big revelation at the end that Glory's a god, which was a really cool way to end the episode, on Buffy's face like, oh dear. But it was a really badass moment for Buffy standing up to the council yet again, and Giles watching on like the proud dad he is, wholesome. And yeah, just a really like fun episode. And it is always nice to kind of, as much as we hate the Watchers Council, it's always nice to like see them pop up every now and again, just to see how much better off Buffy is without them. So that was all very interesting, and I really, really liked that episode a hell of a lot. And then 3rd place is going to be The Gift for me. It's a really, really incredible finale for the season. Really emotional with Buffy's sacrifice at the end. Some really great, cool moments. Willow, and like, she's with me with her spell. So cool. The fight with Glory was awesome. So good. Giles killing Ben. There's like a really shocking and dark moment that I really, really liked. Yeah, there's some like really nice emotional beats with like Buffy and Giles talking. Obviously Buffy's final speech was so good. Everyone's reactions to her death, it was just gut-wrenching, but in an enjoyable way. And that final shot of the grave and everything, it would have been like a nice rounding off for the entire series, but it's also just because that's the end of the season, I think it was really, really effective. I think the only reason for me it wasn't quite higher was because it was one of those moments when I was like, I just needed one more scene with like everyone after they all stood and saw Buffy's body. I wanted a scene after with them like mourning her. That was like the only thing I felt was potentially missing, because I felt like I really needed that catharsis to see everyone else kind of grieve and celebrate her, as opposed to just flat out mourning her. So it did feel like a bit of a sudden end for me, but it was still a fantastic end to the season. Love how they ended up dealing with Glory, how all that foreshadowing came about, and the reveal of like death is your gift gave me chills. So good. The music in that episode was fantastic, and it just really wrapped up a very, very good season in an incredible way. So yeah, The Gift is number 3 for me. Fantastic season finale. Then number 2 is Fall for Love. I adore this episode. My goodness. I love that it was Spike-centric. So I remember getting a few episodes into the season, I was like, oh my god, I really want answers about Dawn, I want a Tara-centric episode, I want a Spike-centric episode. And then episode 5 was answers about Dawn, episode 6 was Tara-centric, episode 7 was Spike-centric. It gave me everything I wanted. I think that's another big thing I love about season 5. It gave me a lot of what I wanted to see. So yeah, we got a really great episode about Spike. The flashbacks with Drusilla and Angelus and Darla were really cool. Seeing him as William, as a human, was awesome. I liked how that all tied together, and then obviously that was kind of still formed a bit of a crossover in Angel as well. So yeah, sucker for crossover episodes, that always helps. It it kind of revisited the idea of Buffy wanting to learn more about the Slayer lineage, which is an aspect of the show I'm always very, very interested in, and then going to Spike about that after his kind of realisation about his feelings for her made for some very interesting scenes. Flashbacks of him killing the Slayers was really, really cool and fun. I always like seeing like a new Slayer pop up, be it like in flashback form or like the Kendra or Faith kind of situation. So yeah, all of that was so good, and yeah, the foreshadowing I think even improved the episode with like Spike saying how the Slayer will always wish for death one day, and how that kind of came back to bite him on the arse at the end of the season. And yeah, seeing like the moment like Spike like gets his coat, all really, really cool little details that I just really, really loved. So that whole episode was just an absolute joy from start to finish, giving me everything I kind of wanted as a fan, both of Spike and of the idea of Buffy learning more about the Slayer lineage and stuff like that. Just a brilliant, brilliant episode that I think is only improved by watching the rest of the season, and I think that just makes it even better. So yeah, Fool for Love was absolutely fantastic. And then, number one, my favourite episode of the season, my top episode. It's crazy to really love an episode but never want to watch it again. And I know a lot of people, you see someone like watch your favourite show for the first time and get to like your favourite episode or an episode they absolutely love. You're kind of jealous that you can never watch it again for the first time. I think this is an example where I'd never be jealous of someone having to watch this for the first time. But yeah, my number one favourite episode of season 5 is The Body. Probably not much of a surprise, it was number 2 for you guys. And yeah, I don't think I've been that emotionally affected by an episode since the finale of season 5 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And even then, that was only like the last 10 minutes of that episode, and that's when things got really tragic and broke my heart and I cried for a long time. This was 40 minutes of the last 10 minutes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 5 episode 22. This was 40 minutes of pain and suffering and torment, and oh my goodness, the performances were top notch. How it didn't win any Emmys and Sarah Michelle Gellar didn't get an Emmy, I don't know. What a crime. People should be arrested. The lack of music made it so powerful. The writing was just top notch. The way we only had like one vampire at the very end, it was very kind of naturalistic in its portrayal of death and grief. Just an emotionally devastating episode that showed me just how invested I was in a secondary character like Joyce. You know, it's not like a main character even died, really. But we saw how this death affected the main characters, and it said so many truths about death, and it showed all the different aspects of grief that I myself have gone through. I kind of saw so much of my own experiences in that episode, and I think that's why it resonated with me so strongly. You know, it reminded me of the day after my nan died, just that silence and that awkwardness and just not knowing what to do. Where do you put your grief? How do you move on? How do you move forward? I don't think you ever really can. You don't get over it, you get used to it. That's what I always say. And I think The Body was a perfect representation of that, and I actually found it myself very cathartic to watch at times, as much as it was awful to see all these characters that I love suffer. But it had these really powerful moments and speeches and so many awesome scenes and acting, and yeah, just like a writing, acting masterclass, really. Just so well put together, an incredibly powerful and raw and brave piece of television, you know, not just in its portrayal of grief, but having Willow and Tara have their first kiss in it on screen. That's awesome that they included that in such a powerful, well-remembered episode. And they didn't make a big deal of it, obviously, because you shouldn't have to make a big deal of it. And I think that was, you know, for what the episode was, and I think they judged it all very perfectly, the way it was kind of split up into different acts, you know, focusing on different people who were affected. It was just an experience as a reactor unlike any other that I've had, watching anything, really. I mean, I've absolutely sobbed at so many things, but this whole episode was just devastating, in the greatest way. And I think it just really changed how I could view the show in a good way. Because like, holy shit, they can go there. Like, that's insane. You know, you expect to sit down like this fun, quirky, supernatural show with a giant praying mantis and a killer puppet man who's hunting down the demon, and fish people. And then they produce an episode like this a couple of years later. Powerful, powerful stuff. An incredible kind of exploration of grief and humans themselves, I think. And I think if you take out the vampire, it could have been an episode of any other TV show, but yet felt distinctive as Buffy, because we know these characters so well. And I think it's just sublime. It's a sublime piece of television that I don't want to watch again and again, because it'd probably be pretty rough to get through again and again and again. But also I think watching it again and again and again would take something away from it, and take away from the impact it may have had that first time. And I think that says a lot about how much you love and respect, more than anything, an episode, is that you don't want to watch it again and again because it might ruin it. And I think that says a lot about how much I love that episode, because I don't want that episode to lessen the impact it has on me. And it was a very bizarre experience, and one I'll never forget. And that is why I think it had to be at the top of my list for episodes this season. Just an incredible piece of television that I will remember for the rest of my life. You know, it's not an episode I'd say, oh yeah, this is what Buffy the Vampire Slayer is. Sit down, guys, and watch this one. You know, I'd probably put a different episode on. But it shows what the show can do, what the writing can do, what the cast can do. And it's a masterclass in every single way. So The Body, my favourite episode of the season, even though it was emotionally devastating. So yeah, that's my top 5 episodes for this season. And next, we move on to the final little section. We're nearly there, guys. Hold on. It's my predictions for season 6. I've got a couple. I've got 5 again, I think, just like last season. Okay, so I had to really think hard for some of these, but I got there in the end. My first one I did kind of assume, and I have talked about this, I think, in my reaction to The Gift, but my first prediction is that Buffy is going to come back, but I think we may have 1 or 2 episodes without her around, maybe focusing on you know, her legacy or the people she's left behind, and see how Dawn's grieving, how Giles is grieving, how Willow and Tara and Xander and Anya and all of them are grieving, and Spike. I think it could be very interesting. I mentioned an arc in Arrow season 3 where it seemed the main character had been killed off, and it kind of spent a few episodes really focusing on the supporting characters and how they were affected by their loss. And I'd love to see a similar thing done here with season 6, and I think that could be an interesting thing. So that's what I'm going to say might happen, because I kind of want it to happen. I think it could be a very interesting thing. Buffy does do very interesting things with some episodes, and I think maybe having a Buffy episode without Buffy could be interesting, and I think if anyone can make it work, it would be this show. So we have to wait and see. But that's my first prediction. I think we'll have at least like 1 episode without Buffy, maybe even 2 or 3. Next prediction, Willow will continue to be a cinnamon roll. I say that with every season because it will always be true. So that speaks for itself really, because I will always love her. Then my third prediction, that Xander and Anya's wedding is going to be like a big plot point for the season. I think otherwise they wouldn't have had it be in the 5th season finale. I feel like they could have done that because it is potentially, could have been like, you know, they write every finale like it could be the last one. It's nice that they'd have that moment in there for like fans of the couple and stuff. But since, you know, they knew season 6 was coming at that point, as I've been told, just at a different network, I feel like they kind of have to follow through with this idea now, and I feel like this is going to be a big part of the season. I would be a bit disappointed if they like just get married in between season 5 and 6. I don't think they're going to do that. So I think the wedding might be a big focus, and it would give Xander and Anya like a big story. That feels a bit more organic, you know. So I feel like Xander didn't have like the biggest arc or whatever last in this season. So this could be a way of bringing him back to the forefront as one of like the main 3 really. Core 4 if you count Giles, but you know, it always seems like Buffy, Willow, Xander, you know. So that'll be really, really cool, and that's going to be my prediction for that. And I also think there's going to be a big returning character. I think someone from the past is going to show up from the early seasons, from like season like 1 or 2, I'm thinking. Only because shows do tend to do this eventually when it gets like season 6. And because I just kind of want like a big return. I don't know who. I really don't know who. But I just feel like we could see like a big return from like a character we haven't seen in yonks. Even if it's like a villain of the week comes back or something. I just feel like that could be interesting. So I put it in as a prediction because I'd like to see it happen. These aren't necessarily predictions. Sometimes they're just like what I want to see. But yeah, I don't really have any evidence for why that would be the case, but that's going to be my prediction because I think it could be quite cool, as long as it's not the She-Mantis. And then finally, I think we're going to have the big bad for next season. If we have a big bad, I think it's going to be like another group of people or like multiple like big bad people. Because season 1 we had like the Master on his own. Season 2 we had Angela, Spike and Drew, like a little group there. Season 3 we had the Mayor, because I don't really count Faith as like the big bad necessarily. Season 4 we had the Initiative and Walsh and Adam and all that big group. Season 5 we had Glory on her own. So if we continue that pattern, season 6 might have like multiple people as a big bad again. So that's going to be my guess for that, just because that's what the pattern's been so far. I don't know what it would be. Maybe like a team of demons or like a group of demons. Maybe, it could be, we saw some like demons and stuff like escape through the portal in the gift, like that dragon thing. Maybe some of the people that escaped into the world before the portals were all closed up, maybe they could be like the big bads for next season. Maybe that. That's what I'm going to go for. So yeah, I feel like we're going to have more than like one big bad person in season 6. Aside from that, season 6, anything goes. I really don't know what to expect, but I'm very, very excited to get into it. Different network, I don't know how it's going to be. Like, is it going to feel any different or not? I don't know. But hopefully you guys are excited to get into those season 6 reactions with me. I'm very excited to start it very soon. But yeah, that's going to be it for my review of season 5. My favourite season so far. Absolutely adored it. What a fantastic season of television. I'm in awe. Like, this show, man, it's just so good. And I can't wait for season 6. Hopefully you can't either. Thank you as always for your support on season 5, with all the love on the reactions, all my patrons on Patreon as well for being so awesome with the full reactions. And yeah, thank you for everyone who posted votes on my post for this review. It really helps me out, and I think it's very interesting to compare your guys' votes with mine. And there is still a bit of time, a couple of days probably, to get on the Angel post if you still haven't already, and vote for your favourite episodes of Angel Season 2. So that's going to be coming up soon, but that's going to be part of like the next cycle of Buffyverse reactions. So you're going to have a couple of extra days before you have to get to that. So yeah, if you don't watch reviews for Angel or whatever, then thank you very much, and I will see you for season 6. Very exciting. But if not, I will see you for the Angel review. So hopefully you'll be hyped for that as well. And congratulations for getting this far. I don't know how long this was. I really am afraid. Who knows? But I'm excited to find out. And yeah, thank you so much as always for your support. You guys are incredible. I'm so glad I started Buffy on this channel nearly 2 years ago now, which is kind of insane. Yeah, special journey, fantastic season, and I can't wait to see where we go with the final 2. So yeah, thank you guys as always. This has been the premiere of my new movie, the Buffy Season 5 review, and until next time, thanks for watching.